He thought hugging the female emperor's thigh would mean a lifetime of comfort, but who knew his own father would stab him in the back, nearly causing him to be castrated. In his previous life, he was a low-level office worker who died from overtime. In this life, he transmigrated into the son of the northern pacifying marquis, only hoping to cling to his rich wife's skirts and lie around enjoying himself. But his convenient old father suddenly surrendered to the barbarian tribe, leaving him to hold a marriage contract with the female emperor and bear the crime of treason. At court, the officials unanimously demanded punishment for the traitor's son, and that Jia Renyi gleefully added fuel to the fire. Thanks to begging the female emperor, he escaped death, but in its place was an order to be taken into the palace as a eunuch, causing him to freeze for a few seconds. Will civilization manage to transcend his lowly status and rewrite his own destiny? Let us step into the world of legends and witness his rise. In the Qiankun continent, martial strength reigns supreme, and the weak are nothing but stepping stones. Warriors are divided into 9 ranks, from the lowest to the pinnacle of power. Legend says that a 9th-rank master could overturn the heavens and take on 10,000 enemies single-handedly. But in the eastern continent, there is a nation so fearsome that no force or fighter dares to challenge it. Wu Chao, the dynasty that boasts the youngest 9th-rank warrior in history. That warrior is none other than the Empress Wu Xin herself. And yet, this extraordinary empress has a fiancé, one who could not be more different from her. In the middle of court, Wen Ming casually places a hand on her leg, calling her my dear wife, as if they were in private. An official immediately snaps. This is indecent behavior in the court. Where are your manners? Minister Jia Renyi steps forward, accusing Wen Ming of disrupting the imperial court and demanding punishment. He insists the marriage be annulled and Wen Ming stripped of his title, reduced to a commoner. A chorus of officials echoes the demand. Annul the marriage. Demote him. Wen Ming roars back. You bunch of old relics are always trying to sabotage my dream of living off the royal treasury. He then reflects on his past life. My name is Wen Ming. I was just an ordinary office worker back on Earth, fresh out of college. He fell for his boss's empty promises and ended up working himself to the bone. Until one day, he collapsed and died right in front of his computer screen. But he got a second chance, reincarnated as the son of the Marquis of Northern Pacification, a golden ticket to a comfortable life. He thought he could coast on his family's wealth, but his father was ordered to guard the northern frontier and took everyone with him. His father took his mother, the servants, and all the fortune, leaving Wen Ming alone with nothing. His plans for a lazy life went up in smoke, but the universe was not done with him yet. Before leaving, his father had left behind a marriage contract made with the previous emperor. The future Empress, Wu Xin, was his fiancé. From then on, her hobbies became his hobbies. Her demands became his commands. And so, flattering the Empress became his new life's mission, the ultimate shortcut to an easy existence. He figured if he could cling to her coattails, he could slack off and never relive his tragic past life. But Wu Xin was not having it. You do not need to use your face for a massage. Get up, she scolded him. How many times do I have to say it? I am the emperor now. Do not act like we are still children. Wen Ming mumbled. Sorry, it will not happen again. Privately, he grumbled. Teenage girls are such a hassle. If it were not for this cushy deal, I would not bother with you. Jia Renyi seized the opportunity. Your Majesty, he touched your sacred body without permission. I accuse him of disrespect. Wen Ming shot back. I was just loosening your muscles for your health. A healthy empress means a stable kingdom. You old fools are just trying to drive a wedge between us. Jia Renyi countered. Slandering a high minister is an even greater crime. Punish him. Wen Ming was not about to let Jia Renyi have the last word, shooting back and accusing the old minister of plotting to marry his son to the empress. But the empress had enough and slammed her hand down, roaring for silence. She reminded everyone she had called the court to discuss state affairs, not to bicker like children. The ministers immediately bowed their heads, muttering apologies and not daring to anger her further. Wen Ming, however, smirked and pointed at them, saying his wife had seen through their hypocritical faces. He then brazenly promised that after the wedding he would make them all kneel and sing. The empress turned her sharp gaze on him next, a warning in her voice. She reminded him they were only engaged, so he was not to call her wife until the ceremony, and Wen Ming nodded frantically. As she tried to steer back to business, Wen Ming muttered about making her taste his family's rules after marriage. Wu Xin caught him mumbling and asked what he said, but he quickly covered it up by offering a massage again. She refused and redirected attention to the urgent northern border report. Minister Jia Renyi stepped forward, informing that scouts reported the barbarians were mobilizing a large force. He warned that the barbarians might take advantage of the Empress's recent ascension to launch an invasion. Wen Ming interrupted, telling her not to worry. His father was unbeatable. He boasted that his father, the Marquis of Northern Pacification, would never let a single barbarian cross the border. Wu Xin admitted that although Wen Ming was an idiot, his father was indeed a fierce warrior. But a sudden shout echoed from the entrance. Urgent report. A messenger rushed in, clutching an 800-ly urgent dispatch from the north. The messenger, named Jie, knelt and presented the scroll to the Empress. He turned to the other officials and smugly told them to take notes on how real officials worked. The Empress ordered the messenger to read it aloud, and Wen Ming excitedly told him to speak loudly about his father's great deeds. The messenger began. Urgent dispatch yesterday. The barbarians invaded with 200,000 men. Lord Wentian led the troops to counterattack at noon. Wen Ming nodded proudly. In the evening, during the battle, the Marquis of Northern Pacification turned his coat and defected to the barbarians. Before he could react, Zhuai guided him, and he let out a pained scream. Zhuai demanded instructions on how to punish the traitor's son, while Wen Ming struggled, shouting that his father must have been framed. Jia Renyi sneered, accusing him of still daring to talk back. He pressed on, claiming he had always known the Marquis harbored ambitions, and that the son was surely a spy for the barbarians. The officials chimed in, each demanding a harsher punishment: beheading, dismemberment, death by 1,000 cuts. Talk about a bloodthirsty crowd. Wen Ming could not believe his ears. He complained that no father should betray his son like that, and if his dad was going to rebel, he could have at least taken him along. He muttered to himself, recounting how he had barely tasted a single good day in this world, enduring all that groveling just so he could marry the Empress and live the easy life. But now his own father had backstabbed him. No way was he going to die a meaningless death again. So he turned to the Empress, begging her to give him a chance to investigate the truth, reminding her of their childhood bond. The Empress considered for a moment and then said she would not kill him. Wen Ming's eyes lit up, hardly believing his ears. But the officials were not done. They urged her not to be soft-hearted, insisting that traitors must be rooted out entirely and demanding his execution. Wu Xin slammed her hand down, silencing them. She declared that Wen Ming would not die, but he would not go unpunished either. Wen Ming quickly agreed, saying he accepted the punishment. He thought all that flattery had paid off, and as long as he kept breathing, there was still hope. The Empress ordered Zhuai to throw him into the imperial prison, and Zhuai acknowledged the command. Then she added the killer detail. She would have the imperial physician prepare to castrate him and make him a eunuch in the palace. Oof. Talk about a brutal plot twist. In the Fuhui Palace, Wu Xin gently brushed her fingers through a companion's hair, her mind elsewhere. Later, soaking in a rose-scented bath, she brooded over the northern barbarian invasion and the sudden rebellion of the Zhenbei Marquis, despite his son being held hostage in the capital. She could not figure out why the Marquis would risk everything, especially when the panic in his son's eyes seemed genuine. Just then, her cheerful friend Sisi bounced in, asking who had put such a gloomy look on the Empress's face. Sisi pretended to ponder, a mischievous grin spreading across her lips. Before Wu Xin could answer, Sisi's hands wandered, and she squealed about how amazing the Empress's figure felt. She kept gushing about the softness, until Wu Xin swatted her hands away, scolding her for never breaking the habit. Sisi just laughed it off, saying it was Wu Xin's own fault for having such a great body. Wu Xin rolled her eyes, but Sisi continued her playful teasing. Under her breath, Wu Xin muttered that Sisi's own changes over the years were even more ridiculous. Sisi caught only a murmur and asked what she said, but Wu Xin quickly brushed it off with a nothing. Changing the subject, Wu Xin asked if Sisi should still be training on the mountain, but Sisi boasted she had already mastered everything her master had to teach. Though admitted, her master said she needed to temper her wild nature. But as soon as the Empress ascended, she was sent down to help. Sisi declared she was ready to assist in governing the realm and swore by the 8 trigram sect to solve all the Empress's problems. She knelt in sincerity, vowing to share any burden, and Wu Xin felt a swell of gratitude. The Empress knew she could rely on Sisi's loyalty, but still hesitated to reveal her true dilemma. Finally, Wu Xin admitted there was something she needed to discuss. Sisi immediately perked up, guessing court conflicts or a prince's rebellion, and Wu Xin had to tell her to be serious. Stammering, Wu Xin began with the classic line, "I have a friend who..." The friend once owed a great debt to a senior, so to repay it, she agreed to marry the senior's son. For over a decade, her childhood friend had been doting and attentive, but now the senior had defected to the enemy. And now, with the wedding approaching, she did not know if her fiancé truly loved her or would eventually turn against her. The weight of uncertainty pressed down as she feared the boy might follow his father's path. Sisi's eyes widened as she caught on, but Wu Xin quickly denied it was about herself. Sisi snorted, calling that friend an idiot for worrying over such a simple matter. She quoted her master, "A man's mouth may lie, but his body will always betray the truth, so why not send a trusted person to test the fiancé's loyalty?" A spark lit in Wu Xin's eyes. "Perfect, I have made my decision." Sisi asked what, and Wu Xin declared that Sisi would be the one to seduce her fiancé. And with that, the scene shifted to a quiet chamber elsewhere in the palace, where a different kind of scheme was about to unfold. In a chamber nearby, the palace eunuch asked the terrified young man if he was ready. Not ready at all, he stammered, clearly panicking. He pleaded his innocence, insisting the empress's words were just to appease the ministers, begging the eunuch not to go through with it. But the eunuch told him to be quiet, reminding him that with his father's rebellion, if he did not cut off the boy's little head, his own big head would roll. It'll only hurt for a second, he said, with no way out. Civilization thought. I'm really going to be the first transmigrator to become a eunuch. Talk about a nightmare scenario. Suddenly the door slammed open with a loud bang, startling everyone. Sisi burst in, holding an imperial scroll. By the Empress's decree, the execution of the traitor's son's castration has been reassigned, she announced. Civilization sobbed internally, thinking the Empress still cared. The eunuch checked the scroll, but Sisi confirmed it was genuine. Her Majesty has ordered that I, Tao Si Si, personally carry out the castration of the traitor's son, she declared with a grin. Civilization immediately backpedaled, begging the eunuch to do it instead, but the eunuch just scurried away, muttering, I am out of here. Our hero cried out, did not the Empress say she'd spare me? Is that sword for castration, or execution? I bet this is a setup. Sisi told him to be grateful, as the Empress had chosen the smartest and cutest girl in the universe to be his paired partner in the palace. Paired partner? I do not want you. My heart belongs only to the Empress. Civilization protested. Enough talk. Sisi raised the blade. Civilization screamed for her to stop, but then she paused, noticing something odd. Sisi's eyes went wide, tears forming as she stared at his situation. What is this? She muttered to herself. How am I supposed to cut this? Just slice it all off. Civilization was mortified. If you do not know what you are doing, do not make things worse. With a clumsy swipe, blood sprayed everywhere. Off-screen, a voice quipped, and so the Great Wu dynasty gained another eunuch. Great. Sisi screamed. Why are you just standing there? Help me stop the bleeding. Then she paused, a dazed look on her face. Oh, I think I forgot something. And she fainted, muttering, I am afraid of blood. Civilization yelled in agony. Could not you have stopped the bleeding before passing out? Classic. That night, the Palace of Respectful Affairs glowed under the moonlight, quiet and still. The young man lying inside, however, was far from peaceful. He grumbled about the crazy palace maid who had been way too vicious to him. Luckily, that idiot fainted at the sight of blood and never noticed she'd only cut his thigh. Otherwise, he'd be a real eunuch by now. Talk about a close call. He knew this was a fluke. If anyone discovered he was not truly castrated, both his head and his pride would be forfeit. Suddenly, a knock on the door jolted him from his thoughts. Sisi entered, leading the so-called eunuch expert, no less than the Grand Intendant of the Inner Palace himself. The old man humbly denied being an expert, but Sisi insisted. The Grand Intendant, Eunuch Hai, was a seasoned veteran who had seen countless new eunuchs over the years. Seeing Wen trembling, Sisi asked if that was normal. Eunuch Hai played along, claiming the boy was just hiding his tears. The old eunuch said he understood the pain, but Wen cursed inwardly. You do not know anything. If it were not for the secret, Wen would have loved to smash that old eunuch's face in. Sisi tried to cheer him up, saying they could be good sisters now since he'd lost just a little flesh. She poked him playfully, making a silly sound. She asked if he was really that upset about being a eunuch. Wen wailed. It hurts so much. But, of course, it was all an act. Sisi then asked Eunuch Hai about his own recovery time. The eunuch gave a vague answer, saying it varied. Eunuch Hai assured everyone that Wen was out of danger and that the palace had gained another excellent colleague. Wen thought darkly. When my father rebels, I will have you all killed. Eunuch Hai took his leave, entrusting Sisi with Wen's care. Wen silently added, and you, crazy girl, you'll get yours too. Feigning politeness, Wen called Sisi the most brilliant and beautiful girl ever, and asked if she could please leave him alone. She just stared back silently. Instead, she announced that the Empress herself had assigned her as his designated partner to look after his meals and daily needs. I am basically your caretaker now, she said. Wen immediately suspected she was a spy. His stomach growled, betraying his hunger. Sisi noticed and mentioned he had not eaten since his capture. She produced some food, and Wen grudgingly admitted the Empress had at least shown a little conscience. Before he could protest, Sisi shoved a pastry into his mouth. Open wide, she commanded. She kept feeding him, saying he needed to eat to recover. Wen could only whimper as he was force-fed. This only deepened Wen's suspicion that she was trying to kill him with kindness, or maybe just kill him. After just 2 bites, he pretended to fall asleep. Sisi was puzzled. How could he be out so fast? She shrugged and decided to clean the courtyard instead, thinking she might actually have a gift for caregiving. Left alone, Wen grumbled about how terrible this palace was. He coughed weakly, genuinely feeling awful. He was convinced he'd die if he stayed. Luckily, his guard was just this weak girl. If he could take her out, he could escape. Later, Wen crept out of the room and stealthily approached Sisi, who was sweeping the yard, a wooden club in his hand. Sisi was muttering about an annoying artificial mountain in her way, and stooped to clean beneath it. Suddenly, she turned and spotted him. Xiao Wenzi, why are you up? Wen quickly improvised. I need to use the toilet. Sisi eyed the wooden club in his hand and asked if he really needed that just to go to the toilet. Wen stammered lamely, caught off guard. With a sheepish grin, he claimed he could barely walk without something to lean on after his recent operation. Sisi sighed and told him to be careful. As he shuffled away, Wen muttered to himself about how someone so small could be so strong, and the absurdly large knife she'd used. Talk about an isekai full of surprises. Rounding a corner, Sisi came face to face with the Empress. Xingjie? She blurted out in surprise. Wu Xin immediately scolded her for going too far. She was only supposed to scare him, not actually castrate him. Sisi shrugged, blaming his ugly anatomy for the accident. Sisi pointed out the obvious. Wen was now a full-fledged eunuch. No going back. Wu Xin threw up her hands in frustration. How was she supposed to test his loyalty now? What was the point? Sisi teased the Empress, asking if she had feelings for Wen. Wu Xin's face flushed as she denied it vehemently. She quickly rationalized, claiming that a eunuch had no ambition, so she could never uncover any rebellion plot. Yeah, that was definitely the reason. But Sisi assured her she had a plan. Wu Xin leaned in, curious. According to Sisi's genius observation, the walls around the palace toilets were low. If Wen had rebellious intentions, he'd surely try to escape while pretending to relieve himself. And she had already set a trap outside with no guards in sight. It was the perfect snare. If he took the bait and climbed over, it would confirm his traitor status beyond doubt. Back in his room, Wen was plotting his escape. This little palace thinks it can hold me. Once I find my father, I will take her throne. Sisi suggested torture to extract a confession, but Wu Xin recoiled. That is a bit too much, she protested. A piercing scream echoed from the courtyard. Sisi's eyes lit up. He must have fallen into my trap. Sisi dashed off to catch him red-handed, while Wu Xin stood frozen, whispering in anguish. Wen, were you lying to me all along? Meanwhile, in another part of the palace, a different plot was unfolding. Eunuch Hai addressed his subordinates, ordering them to stay alert and ignore anything untoward. They responded with a unified yes. A bird swooped down, delivering a rolled message to Eunuch Hai. He opened it, his eyes narrowing as he read. I see. A sinister smile spread across his face. So that thing is indeed in the Wen kid's hands, he murmured. Sisi cackled with delight. Ha ha ha. This time I have finally caught you, genius that I am. She shouted. Do not think of escaping. But then a puzzled huh escaped her lips as she and Wen Ming locked eyes. Sisi discovered Wen Ming in the latrine, and blood splattered all over her face as she yelped in surprise. So much blood, she cried, and Wu Xin rushed over, shouting Sisi, in alarm. Wen Ming snapped. Are you perverts? Who watches a eunuch take a dump? While Wu Xin hurriedly insisted. Wait, this is a misunderstanding. Not only did you castrate me, he seethed, but now you humiliate me like this. Fine, I will give you a good look, he declared bitterly. See how pathetic your former consort, now a eunuch, has become. Wu Xin panicked. Whoa. Wait, it is all a misunderstanding. But Wen Ming only laughed maniacally. Ha ha ha. Look, why are not you looking? Burn this ugly sight into your brains. I told you, Wu Xin repeated desperately. It is a misunderstanding. Grabbing Sisi, she apologized. Sorry. Let us get out of here. And they fled. Wen Ming exhaled in relief. Finally, I managed to fool them. Back in her chambers, Wu Xin shook Sisi awake. Look at your brilliant idea. I have lost face in front of Wen Ming. Sisi winced. Ow, my face is being torn off. But added, he is just a little eunuch now. He would not dare spread it. That makes me even angrier. Wu Xin fumed. Who told you to actually castrate him? Sisi whimpered. I admit my mistake. I did not realize his injury was so severe. Ashin mused that even going to the toilet sprayed so much blood. Sisi groaned. It hurts. Wu Xin issued a decree. Tao Si Si, hear me. I give you an additional task. No tricks this time. You must take care of Wen Ming and heal his wounds. Sisi bowed. Your servant obeys. I am going back now, Wu Xin said, turning to leave. Be good to Wen Ming. Sisi replied meekly. Yes, but privately, Wu Xin thought. At least, he did not truly betray me. Meanwhile, Wen Ming grumbled. They even follow me to the toilet. They are starting to suspect, he realized. Too bad the wound opened when I climbed the wall. Otherwise I would not have to put up with this crap to escape the palace. Sisi, however, was not fooled. I am not as easy to deceive as Sister Wu Xin. I will expose your true identity. Wen Ming returned to his room, finally alone. After being tormented by that crazy woman all day and losing so much blood, he sighed, collapsing. Finally, I can rest properly. Though there was a chance to escape in the toilet, he mused. I am not putting all my hopes in one place. I have seen plenty of movies from my past life. If I dig through the palace sewer, I can definitely escape. But Sisi's voice rang out. Little Wen, come give me a hand. She caught him sneaking around. What are you up to? He stammered. Nothing. Just resting after too much bleeding. Do you take me for an idiot? She shot back. I can see guilt written all over your face. He could only mutter. Oh. Wen Ming protested. Wait, this is my room. Why are you here? And what is with all these things? Sisi smirked. The Empress ordered me to take care of your daily needs, so naturally I am living with you. Wen Ming's eyes widened as she started undressing. Talk if you want, but why are you taking off your clothes? Sisi shot him a sharp look, demanding to know why he was panicking. She casually added that even if she stripped completely, what could a little eunuch like him do anyway? According to the old woman, sleepy men were most likely to spill the truth, and Sisi was not about to miss this golden chance for information. Wen Ming stammered that even as a eunuch, this was really inappropriate. With a yelp, he asked what on earth she was doing. She replied sweetly that she was just helping him apply medicine. He insisted he could do it himself. No need for her help. Sisi snapped at him to stop talking nonsense. She did not want to get punished by the Empress. Wen Ming shot back. Do not? You know men and women should not touch? Internally, he cursed her crazy mind paired with an annoyingly perfect body. She laughed. What man are you? A eunuch. He panicked, thinking if this kept up. He realized that if she continued, she'd discover he was not actually castrated without even needing to check. And worse, his body was reacting. Wen Ming grumbled about her rough handling while applying medicine, and how strong she was. He thought it is over. Sisi noticed something hidden on him and demanded to know what it was. He decided he had no choice but to use the old trick again. She saw through his bluff and shouted that he was using the same trick. Blood sprayed everywhere as he faked another wound. Sisi cried out at all the blood, but Wen Ming sighed in relief that he dodged that bullet. A black-clothed man appeared, looking confused. He grumbled that crazy woman had not only ruined him, but also stolen his bed. Determined not to be exposed any longer, he resolved to speed up his escape plan. In her sleep, Sisi giggled and demanded that he come clean, while Wen Ming gritted his teeth. He complained that she interrogated him even in her dreams, and her sleeping posture was atrocious. Sisi sleep-talked about grabbing him now, making him jump. She mumbled about having his weakness. She groped around, shouting that she'd got it, causing Wen Ming to silently beg for death. He thanked his stars she had bad sleeping posture. Otherwise, being grabbed till morning would have exposed everything. Wen Ming lamented his unlucky fate and slowly got up. Still sleeping, Sisi murmured. Little Wen, what are you hiding down there? He froze in horror. Sisi leaned in again, cooing. Little Wen, what exactly are you hiding down there? She reached out and poked, asking what that hard thing was, completely clueless about the awkward situation she was causing. Wen Ming panicked, yelping that she could not touch there, and mentally cursed that both his heads were about to get chopped off. But Sisi was not backing down, demanding to see what it was. Then she deadpanned, it is just a spoon? Why are you carrying a spoon around? Wen Ming awkwardly explained he got hungry last night and snuck some food. Sisi scoffed, calling it boring, and dropped the subject. Wen Ming breathed a sigh of relief, thinking how close he'd come to being exposed. Good thing he'd hidden the spoon under him. Sisi switched gears, reminding him she promised the Emperor to take care of him, so he had to get up for breakfast. Wen Ming asked warily what exactly she meant by breakfast, while Sisi started rummaging around. With a mischievous grin, she announced, white and fluffy steamed buns, of course. Wen Ming screamed in horror, telling her to stay away. 7 days later, Hai Gong Gong showed up, announcing it was time for little Wen to start learning how to serve the master. Sisi happened to walk in and greeted the eunuch cheerfully. Wen Ming, still sniffling, claimed he was fine and could move normally, but his tears told a different story. Hai Gong Gong raised an eyebrow, saying he did not look fine at all, and suggested a few more days of rest. Wen Ming immediately jumped up, begging to be taken anywhere else, and Hai Gong Gong had to tell him to calm down and not dirty his robe. With that, Hai Gong Gong led Wen Ming away, while Sisi cheerfully waved them off, telling the eunuch to take good care of him. Once they were gone, Sisi's smile faded as she thought out loud. 7 days without a slip-up. Maybe Wen Ming really was not involved in the rebellion after all. Outside, Wen Ming vowed he'd do anything to escape that woman's care, and Hai Gong Gong chuckled, saying he probably could not handle hard labor in the palace. Hai Gong Gong assured him that as a former consort, he'd get a cushy job. Wen Ming thanked him profusely, but inwardly, Wen Ming was suspicious. The old eunuch's sudden friendliness felt off. What was he planning? Scene change. Hai Gong Gong called little Wen into a room. He assigned Wen Ming the job of tasting the Emperor's food for poison. Wen Ming's eyes lit up with excitement. Hai Gong Gong warned him to only take 1 bite per dish, or the Emperor would get angry. Wen Ming nodded, saying he knew the rules, but then took a comically huge bite. Hai Gong Gong gasped, that is way too big. Hai Gong Gong sighed, letting him eat more, but muttered under his breath that if Wen Ming were not useful, he'd kill him right there. Suddenly, Wen Ming got emotional, telling Hai Gong Gong he was the only one who'd been kind to him since entering the palace. He dropped to his knees and asked to be accepted as a foster son. Hai Gong Gong protested, saying Zhenbai Ho was still alive, but Wen Ming passionately denounced his own father as a traitor unworthy of being a dad. Hai Gong Gong played along, calling him a righteous child, and the two embraced in a fake father-son bond, each with their own hidden agenda. Behind his grateful facade, Wen Ming was already plotting to use the old eunuch as a stepping stone until he found his own father. Just wait, he thought, I will make you call me ancestor. Hai Gong Gong, on the other hand, was equally deceptive. He sneered inwardly, thinking Wen Ming was a fool for falling for such a small favor, and planned to get rid of him once he got what he wanted. Still hungry after tasting the imperial dishes, Wen Ming suggested adding more courses for the emperor so he could eat more, but Hai Gonggong cut him off, telling him to hold on. The eunuch explained that palace food was mostly for show, not filling, so they'd go somewhere else to eat. Under his breath he muttered that this kid must be a pig reincarnated to have eaten so much and still be hungry. Wen Ming hesitated, pointing out that it was his first day on the job, and he should not be skipping work. But Hai Gonggong waved it off, saying that as his foster father, such minor details did not matter. Perfect, thought Hai Gonggong. This was a chance to check if that legendary technique was on Wen Ming's person. He told the boy to change into some sharp clothes and follow him, and Wen Ming eagerly agreed. Scene shift to a bustling street at night. Wen Ming's eyes went wide as he realized they were in the pleasure district, with courtesans calling out from balconies. "This is a brothel?" he stammered. "You said we were going to eat," Wen Ming protested. "Are not we a bit too bold? Two eunuchs visiting a brothel?" But Hai Gonggong just smirked, saying no one would know who they were, and shoved him inside. A smiling hostess welcomed them, promising that their girls would satisfy. Wen Ming was completely flustered, not knowing where to look. Hai Gonggong told him to relax and enjoy himself, all expenses paid. Wen Ming reluctantly muttered an okay, still uneasy. While Wen Ming was distracted, Hai Gonggong quietly instructed the madam to send their most beautiful courtesan to attend the young master and report his every move. The madam nodded and hurried off. Alone, Hai Gonggong pondered the legend. The invincible Zhen Baiho owed his strength to a miraculous technique that could regrow limbs and heal the dead. If it was true, he must have passed it to his son. 7 days was enough for a severed body part to regrow. So if Wen Ming actually did anything with the courtesan, it would prove the technique existed. A maidservant led Wen Ming to a lavish room and told him to wait. Suspicious. He wondered what the old eunuch's real game was in bringing him to a brothel. But someone else was watching. Sisi, who had been tailing them, muttered to herself, "This guy, he is definitely up to something." The madam of the brothel leaned in with a knowing smile, boasting that their courtesan was a rare beauty from the western regions, so exclusive even the most elite young masters could barely get a glimpse. Wen Ming's mind raced as he realized that Hai Gonggong, fully aware of his disguise as a eunuch, had brought him here. Could this be another test from that scheming little empress? Playing it cool, he waved a hand and said he was not all that interested in the courtesan himself, and would rather just get some extra dishes. The madam chuckled at his bluff. She teased that once he saw the lady, he'd change his tune and want to devour her instead. But Wen Ming was not buying it. He was convinced the old madam was in cahoots with Hai Gonggong, watching his every move, and he'd have to be extra careful not to slip up. Just then, a voice from outside announced the arrival of Ruyan, the courtesan of Chonghua Tower. When she stepped in, Wen Ming's jaw dropped. This was the legendary Western beauty. She looked more like an alien than a celestial maiden. Serving girl nearby snickered, calling him an uncultured bumpkin. Wen Ming was taken aback, wondering if she meant him, but the girl just offered a flat welcome. A soft click echoed as the doors opened wider, and the serving girl formally invited Ruyan to make her grand entrance. The courtesan glided in with an apologetic smile, introducing herself as Lu Ruyan, the prized flower of Chonghua Tower. Wen Ming stammered, barely managing a flustered "No, it is fine." But inside, he was cursing Hai Gonggong for thinking a foreign vixen could seduce him. Ruyan reached out and touched his burning cheek, playfully asking if the heat was making him sweat and blush so much. Wen Ming yelped, "Too close." He squeezed his eyes shut, chanting a mantra to block out temptation, while Ruyan burst into laughter at his flustered reaction. She invited him to sit and let her feed him some fruit to quench his thirst. Outside, the serving girl whispered to the madam that no man could keep a secret from Ruyan, and the madam agreed, snickering that Wen Ming was clearly a clueless virgin. Suddenly, the madam's eyes went wide as she saw someone unexpected, her mouth hanging open in shock. Inside, Ruyan sweetly told Wen Ming to open wide. He tried to resist, insisting he could feed himself, but his inner voice screamed at him to stay strong. Ruyan tilted her head with a mischievous grin, suggesting that if he wanted her to feed him in a different way, that would not be proper at all. Wen Ming's thoughts boiled over. This demoness was impossible to resist. Privately, Ruyan smirked, thinking that this little eunuch was easy to manipulate with a bit of teasing, and hooking his heart would make her scheme go smoothly. But a commotion outside interrupted them as someone shouted that a young Master Jia was demanding to see Ruyan. The door flew open, and Jia Zhengdao barged in, bragging that his father was the prime minister, and ordering everyone to step aside. Wen Ming's heart sank when he recognized the man. Jia Zhengdao, the notorious brat. This was bad news. He imagined Jia catching him in a brothel and reporting it to the little empress, who'd have him executed. The thought sent chills down his spine. With no other choice, he resolved to bluff his way through as Ruyan called out to him. Jia announced loudly that he was celebrating because he'd heard Wen Ming had been castrated, which made his day. He then demanded that the top courtesan serve him wine to flaunt his status, ignoring the madam's flustered protests. Jia Zhengdao tossed a bag of silver at the madam, bragging that he had plenty to spare. Peeking through the door, Hai Gonggong cursed under his breath at the meddling brat who was ruining his carefully laid plans. Jia demanded to see the legendary Western beauty, eager to judge her with his own eyes. Ruyan smoothly lied that the previous guest had fled out the window upon hearing Jia's fearsome reputation. Hai Gonggong nodded from the shadows, satisfied that the courtesan knew how to handle the situation. Hidden beneath her skirt, Wen Ming silently cheered, thinking Ruyan was doing a great job of fobbing off the arrogant jerk. Ruyan reminded herself to stay calm, remembering that this eunuch was useful to her plans and could not be exposed yet. Jia praised Ruyan as a country-toppling beauty and called himself lucky to finally meet her, while she modestly dismissed the flattery. Jia grinned in approval, but Ruyan's inner thoughts were cold. She would not let this playboy touch her, not after having to serve a eunuch already. Playing the gracious hostess, Ruyan offered to pour Jia some wine to soothe his travels, biding her time. Jia, now alone with her, dropped all pretense and told her to stop acting modest. But Ruyan firmly stated she was a pure performer who sold only artistry. Scoffing, Jia declared he'd see just how pure she really was, and a sharp crack echoed through the room. Suddenly, Jia's eyes went wide as he stared at Ruyan, caught off guard by something unexpected. Meanwhile, a flustered Wen Ming was hiding under Ruyan's skirt, barely daring to breathe. Jia asked what was wrong, and Ruyan laughed it off, saying his sudden forcefulness had just startled her. From his hiding spot, Wen Ming noted that this courtesan's martial arts were suspiciously good, confirming she was up to something. A strange sight caught Wen Ming's eye, and a startled yelp escaped Ruyan's lips. Jia leered, suggesting she was trying to seduce him, but Ruyan denied it, her inner thoughts branding him an overconfident idiot. Ruyan fumed inwardly at the dead eunuch hiding under her skirt, wondering if he wanted to be thrown out, while Wen Ming squinted in the dim light. Jia made a move to climb onto the bed with her, and Ruyan frantically told him to wait. Running his hand along her arm, Jia remarked how soft her skin was for a Western woman. Ruyan steeled herself, ready to fight rather than let this fool take advantage of her. Jia continued his unwanted caress, then commented that she should shave her leg hair more often. Pausing, Jia repeated leg hair, in confusion, and Ruyan let out a bewildered huh? Ruyan cried out for Jia to stop as he reached for her skirt. In the chaos, Jia suddenly spotted Wen Ming and shouted in disbelief. Wen Ming, what are you doing here? Caught red-handed, Wen Ming stammered that he was just as confused and asked if Jia would even believe him. Jia Zhendao barked at Wen Ming to come out, but Wen Ming raised his hands, insisting that a gentleman settles things with words, not fists. Then Jia reminded him, are not you supposed to be a eunuch in the palace? Leaving without permission is a death sentence. Wen Ming stammered that he did not leave on his own. Eunuch Hai brought him out. Jia scoffed, claiming he had not seen Hai anywhere, and questioned why an old eunuch would ever come to a place like this. Meanwhile, hidden nearby, Eunuch Hai decided it was too risky to get further involved, so he retreated for now, planning to probe another time. Wen Ming tried to play the friendship card, begging Jia not to corner him, but Jia coldly replied it was far too late to call on their past bonds. Jia then unloaded his pent-up grudge back in school. Wen Ming repeatedly bullied him because they both admired the Empress, even falsely accusing Jia of soiling his pants in front of her, making her avoid him ever since. Later, when Jia tried to enter the palace through the imperial exams, Wen Ming switched his exam paper, causing him to fail miserably. Ruyan cut in, saying that was outright inhuman, to which Wen Ming awkwardly laughed it off as just a joke between friends. But Jia was not done. He declared that was not even the worst part. The most infuriating bit was after that failure. Wen Ming had the Empress assign Jia to be a stable master, forcing him to tend to horses. And for years, Jia lived a hellish life surrounded by horse manure. Wen Ming tried to defend himself, saying he heard Jia really liked horses. Then he added, you have no idea how happy I was when I heard you got castrated. A respectable man like me could not resist coming to the Qinghua Tower to celebrate, and immediately he scolded himself for making excuses to visit a brothel. Jia sneered, but I never expected to catch your crime of leaving the palace without permission. Rest assured, I will hand you over to the Empress for proper punishment. Wen Ming panicked, realizing Jia was dead serious. Seeing no mercy, Wen Ming declared, since you show no old friendship, do not blame me for what comes next. He lunged at Wen Ming shouting, die for me, young master. Jia was shocked, gasping, what? How is that possible? When did you get this strong? Jia revealed, naive fool, did you think I wasted my years like you? While living with those beasts, I mastered a secret technique. He proclaimed, 100% bare-handed horse manure catch, a hidden weapon skill. Wen Ming was caught off guard, and Jia pressed his advantage, declaring he would not let him live. Wen Ming screamed, my father will kill you. Ruyan thought to herself, this eunuch is my only way into the deep palace. Letting him die would ruin my plan. I was going to use this control technique later, but I have no choice now. She called out sweetly, young master, Jia, please wait. You rarely visit. How can you leave without sharing a drink with me? I feel so neglected. She added, besides, if you take him away right after arriving, the madam will blame me for poor hospitality. Jia realized his rudeness and apologized, admitting he had not thought it through. But he thought to himself, my men are all outside anyway. He cannot escape, so he relented. Since Miss Ruyan is so kind, I will stay and enjoy your company. Ruyan thanked him profusely. Jia promised, I am in a good mood today. Serve me well, and you'll be richly rewarded. Ruyan expressed her gratitude. Wen Ming wondered, is she trying to help me? But what is her angle? Ruyan raised a cup and said, come, young Master Jia, let me feed you a drink. Jia grinned, all right, hee. Ruyan gave a delicate cry of ah, and pretended to drop the wine glass. Ruyan feigned a clumsy apology for spilling the wine, but Jia waved it off casually. Yet a subtle fragrance from her sleeve drifted toward him, carrying a hint of danger. She silently grinned. The poison was working. Jia's eyes glazed over as he stammered incoherently. Using her enchanted scent, she asked if he felt sleepy and eager to obey. Jia murmured a dazed yes. Wen Ming watched from the side, realizing she was actively controlling Jia's consciousness. Her technique and the tattoo on her arm confirmed to him that she was definitely part of that notorious organization. Ruing commanded him to forget he had seen anyone else. Jia blankly repeated her words. She declared that after a sleep, he would be completely under her control. But out of nowhere, Jia jolted awake and leaped to his feet. He grabbed Ruyan, accusing her of poisoning him and calling her a witch. Startled, she could only ask how he had broken the spell. Jia laughed triumphantly, explaining that years of dealing with horse manure had ruined his sense of smell, making her poison useless. Ruyan groaned about the horse manure's surprising versatility, while Jia condemned them both as conspirators and shoved her. He moved to strike, and Ruyan cried out as the attack landed. Wen Ming wondered why Jia did not catch the attack barehanded, but Ruyan noted the poison had slowed him down. Wen Ming grew suspicious, knowing martial arts and using poisons were not typical for a courtesan. Ruyan demurely said she only did it to save him. She insisted she had fallen for him instantly and could not stand by. Ruyan smirked, acknowledging he was different from other men, but still paused ominously. Wen Ming pressed for her true intentions, but she simply noted his lack of strength. She cooed that she just wanted his compliance and would not hurt him. Wen Ming backed away, scared, pleading for her to stop. But something inside him was about to burst, and he could not hold it any longer. Ruyan sensed a shift and asked what that was. Her face flushed as she gasped at the sheer size of it. Outside, the guards cynically joked about courtesans, sweet talk, unaware of the chaos inside. Ruyan stammered in disbelief, realizing the man before her was no eunuch, and desperately tried to explain it was all a misunderstanding. But she pointed angrily at the obvious evidence in his pants, refusing to accept any excuses. Cursing her bad intel, she tightened her grip, making him yelp in pain and beg her to stop. Her thoughts raced. If he was not a eunuch, she had been completely taken advantage of, and her reputation would be ruined if word got out. Deciding there was no other way, she resolved to kill him to silence the only witness to her disgrace. He yelped in shock and fear, not believing she was actually going through with it. Complaining about his rotten luck, he muttered that even a visit to a brothel had turned into a life-threatening mess. With a furious yell, she lunged at him, calling him a shameless lecher. He cried out, warning that killing him would ruin her mission for the Tianlian sect. She coyly denied any connection to the sect, but he bluntly called her out on her terrible lie and demanded she drop the knife. Feigning embarrassment, she admitted she might have overreacted just a little. Yet inwardly, she panicked, wondering how her identity had been exposed and if others knew, putting her in grave danger. She tried to brush it off, saying joining the Tianlian sect was a capital offense and he should not joke, but he insisted she drop the act. He coldly revealed that all Tianlian members bore a lotus mark on their bodies, which he had clearly seen, and she gasped in shock. Realizing he was the only one in the know, she decided killing him was still the safest option, but he quickly offered to help with the sect's mission in the capital. Suddenly, a loud commotion erupted as Sisi barged in, shouting for everyone to clear the way, while Wu Xin quietly told her not to be so conspicuous. Wu Xin wondered aloud why civilization would ever come to such a place. Sisi gleefully accused civilization of finally being caught red-handed in his improper activities. The guards tried to block Sisi, telling her to scram, but she demanded to know who they thought they were dealing with. Ignoring them, she shouted for civilization to come out immediately, with an explosion of energy in the background. Seeing Wu Xin, civilization called out in relief, saying she had perfect timing. He dropped to his knees and formally greeted her as emperor, but she hissed at him not to reveal her identity in such a place. She ordered him to get up quickly. Ruyan observed from the side, realizing this young woman was the infamous Emperor of Wu, much younger than she had imagined. She also noted the terrifying aura emanating from the emperor, rivaling even her own masters. Sisi accused civilization of coming to a brothel despite being a eunuch, and he protested that he was only brought there for a meal by the eunuch Hai. Sisi mocked him, asking if he expected her to believe that a meal ended with the courtesan on top of him, and he started to explain. Ruyan interrupted with a cold threat, warning him to watch his words, or she would take him down with her. Quickly thinking on his feet, civilization claimed Ruyan was actually a masseuse who had been working on his acupressure points when she fell on him, and she nodded along, while Sisi remained skeptical. Wu Xin, believing the story, asked for a massage, but Tao Si Si warned her not to trust him. Ruyan hesitated for a moment before meekly agreeing to the emperor's request. She shot a desperate glare at Civilization, silently begging him to save her from the mess he created, but he just shrugged it off as her problem now. Furious at his betrayal, she silently vowed to drag him down with her if it came to that. Turning to the group with a sly smile, she announced that she had fallen on Civilization because she discovered a huge secret about him. Before she could expose it, Civilization interrupted loudly, claiming he too was a masseuse, leaving Ruyan stunned. He quickly explained that Ruyan had learned of his techniques and intentionally tackled him to test them out. A story the Emperor found perfectly reasonable, though Sisi was having none of it. Panicking, the two conspirators whispered urgently to each other, agreeing they needed to find a scapegoat fast. But Sisi caught them exchanging glances and called them out on their suspicious behavior. She demanded to know why practicing massage required knocking someone unconscious on the floor, accusing them of hiding a sinister plot. Civilization launched into a dramatic sob story about how Jia Zhengdao, knowing he was a eunuch, had the eunuch Hai trick him into coming to the brothel to humiliate him, and he barely escaped with his life. Ruyan watched his performance with admiration. Emperor Wu Xin sympathized, saying Jia Zhengdao was too cruel to target a man just recovering, but Sisi warned her not to fall for his lies so easily. Sisi then declared she would simply wake up the unconscious Jia Zhengdao and expose their lies. Ignoring Civilization's pleas to stop, she shook the man awake. Jia Zhengdao blinked in confusion, wondering where he was and what had happened. Civilization's face fell as he realized the jig was up. There was no way to hide the truth now. Jia Zhengdao glared at Civilization, his voice dripping with accusation. Sisi jumped in, demanding that he spill all of Civilization's shady schemes. Zhengdao let out a mocking laugh, taunting that the guy had actually become a eunuch. What a pathetic joke. Both Sisi and Civilization froze, exchanging bewildered looks. Sisi pressed him, asking if that was all he had to say, but Zhengdao countered by asking if she was also an enemy, then insisted that becoming a eunuch was worth celebrating. In a hushed tone, Ruyan explained that her memory-erasing potion would make sure Zhengdao could not rat them out, and Civilization praised her as the demon sect's best. Meanwhile, Zhengdao muttered to himself, still fixated on the eunuch fact. He then burst out laughing, dreaming of replacing Civilization as the Empress's consort and claiming her for himself. But just then, the Empress herself, Wu Xin, appeared and asked sarcastically if he was so confident about becoming the consort, and Zhengdao, not recognizing her voice, boasted that his father, the Prime Minister, had already arranged everything. Wu Xin taunted him, pointing out that the Prime Minister could even arrange the Empress's consort. How impressive, and Zhengdao suddenly froze, realizing the voice. He spun around and stammered, "Empress." Without mercy, Wu Xin coldly announced his father's demotion and ordered Zhengdao back to work at the stables, and he desperately tried to explain himself. With a casual slap, she sent him flying, warning him not to come near her, and Zhengdao yelped as he crashed to the ground. Ruyan watched from the shadows, realizing she was no match for the so-called dog emperor. A single backhand was terrifyingly powerful. Sisi asked if she might have killed him, but Wu Xin replied that she had controlled her strength, just enough to knock him silly without brain damage. Dazed and confused, Zhengdao slowly sat up, then suddenly jolted, as his memories came flooding back, including the truth about Civilization, and that woman. Civilization and Ruyan exchanged horrified glances as they saw his memory returning. Civilization hissed at Ruyan, demanding to know why the memory loss was not working, and she explained that a blow to his head could trigger the return of lost memories. It was complicated. Panicking, Civilization realized he had to stop Zhengdao from spilling the beans, no matter what. Sisi eagerly urged Zhengdao to expose Civilization's crimes, and he started recounting what happened when he arrived, but Civilization quickly interrupted, pretending to notice something stuck to his butt. Before Zhengdao could react, Civilization yanked the knife out of his backside, spraying blood across Sisi's face, and she immediately fainted. Wu Xin caught the fainting Sisi, calling her name in concern. Civilization urged the Empress to take Sisi to a physician immediately, and Wu Xin agreed. He then offered to escort Zhengdao home safely, and Wu Xin nodded and carried Sisi away. Ruyan gave Civilization a sly smile, acknowledging his quick thinking. Without wasting time, Civilization asked Ruyan how to wipe Zhengdao's memory again. She told him a solid blow to the back of the head should do the trick, and Civilization grinned, appreciating the simplicity. He grabbed a random vase and declared it the memory erase vase. Raising the vase high, he prepared to strike, while a terrified Zhengdao asked what he was doing, and Civilization apologized, bringing the vase down with a sickening crack. A while later, Zhengdao lay unconscious with a massive bump on his head, and Civilization dusted off his hands and declared the job done. Civilization, trying to build rapport, suggested they were now allies after what they'd been through. Ruyan was not buying it, sneering that she had no interest in being comrades with a fake eunuch, but Civilization pressed on, pointing out that the Tianlian sect must have some goal in the capital, and having him as an inside man would be pretty useful. She raised an eyebrow, asking why she should trust him. That is when he dropped a bombshell. His father was the rebellious Zhenbei Marquis, and he hated the imperial court for ordering his castration. Ruyan dryly noted that he was not actually a eunuch. Civilization shot back that was exactly the proof of his treason, at least a death by 1,000 cuts. That convinced her, and she believed him, but told him to put his pants back on. He explained that the Empress was constantly watching him, and if she discovered the truth, he'd die a worse death than any cultist. Still, Ruyan said words alone were not enough to trust him. As civilization started to ask how to prove his loyalty, Ruyan suddenly shoved a pill into his mouth. He choked and demanded to know what she had given him. Ruyan calmly explained it was the yin-yang harmony pill, and the effects would not kick in for 7 days. Civilization panicked, asking what happened after 7 days. She replied that without the antidote, he'd turn into a lust-driven beast, and his fake eunuch cover would be blown. He cried out that women were the most poisonous. Civilization complained that he was genuinely trying to help her, yet she still poisoned him. Ruyan assured him that if he cooperated, the pill would actually become a tonic. She ordered him to gather palace intelligence and meet her here in 7 days. Grudgingly, he agreed. But in his mind, civilization was already plotting. Once his father's rebellion succeeded, he'd wipe out the Tianlian sect first. The scene shifted to that night in civilization's room. A black-clad assassin crept in, moving silently and stealthily. It was Hai Gong, inwardly fuming that brat Zheng Dao had ruined his plans at the worst possible moment. Still, he had a backup plan. He approached a cup of water and discreetly slipped something into it. Hai Gong smirked to himself, thinking he still had a second option. From outside the room, voices interrupted Hai Gong's sneaky poisoning. Civilization protested. We've already proven it was a misunderstanding. Can you stop watching me like I am some thief? Sisi shot back. You just got lucky this time. A guilty conscience needs no accuser. But civilization was not having any of that. I am not afraid of a guilty conscience, he muttered. I am afraid of what is hiding in the shadows. Talk about main character energy. Back in his room, civilization noticed something off. I could have sworn I locked the windows before leaving, he thought. Is there really a ghost? Little did he know. Hai Gong had already slipped away clean. Sisi was not buying it. See? You were so distracted when you left. That just proves you have a guilty conscience. Civilization snapped back. Guilty my foot. You've been hassling me all day, and I have not even had a sip of water. Thirsty as hell. Civilization grabbed the cup of water that Hai Gong had poisoned, completely unaware. Meanwhile, Hai Gong watched from the roof, grinning like a maniac. Hai Gong's inner voice cheered. That is right. Drink up. You are thirsty, so down it goes. Bruh, this guy is cooked. Just as civilization was about to take a sip, Sisi snatched the cup away. Wait, Sisi declared. This cup is mine. I have been working hard all day too. Civilization fumed. You jerk. You are going to fight me over a cup of water. Even Hai Gong muttered the same line under his breath. Absolute chaos. Sisi paused. Huh? Did I hear someone else's voice? Civilization shrugged. Probably just an echo. Sisi decided she did not care. Forget it. I am dying of thirst. And she chugged the entire cup. Sisi let out a satisfied sigh. Ah, that is the stuff. Civilization could not help but comment. Really? You had to make drinking water look so suggestive. Hai Gong was furious. Damn it. Why does someone always mess up my plans? Well, at least that aphrodisiac works on both sexes. When the girl's dose kicks in, I can still use her to test civilization, Sisi said. Do not be so petty. Go fetch your own water from the yard. Civilization grumbled. You unreasonable girl. So civilization trudged to the well to get a drink. But he found a sign on the well. A eunuch committed suicide in this well today. He was temporarily suspended. Get water at Yihei Garden 2 lie away. Civilization was exasperated. Who in their right mind would go to Yihei Garden in the middle of the night? Hai Gong gloated from his hiding spot. That aphrodisiac is deadly without ice water. You are not escaping my scheme tonight, kid. Talk about a villain with a plan. Defeated, civilization returned to his room. Guess I will have to wait until tomorrow to get water from the imperial kitchen. But then Sisi started acting oddly. You are really thirsty, are not you? She asked. Yeah. So funny. I am feeling really hot and thirsty too. Sisi moved closer. Let us find a way to quench our thirst right now. Civilization backed away. What are you doing? She got right in his face. Do not come so close, he yelped. Wah? He shoved her off. What the hell? That was my first kiss. I have not even kissed my darling yet. But Sisi was not satisfied. Not enough. She lunged again. Not enough. Civilization screamed. You demoness. Stop messing around. Civilization's mind raced. She has been drugged. Has not she? Did my yin-yang harmony pill have some contagious effect? Or maybe this is still a test to see if I am really a eunuch, he thought. Sisi moaned. Come on. I need more. Hai Gong urged silently. Go on, girl. Get his secret out of him. Sisi chased civilization around. Do not run. They ended up back at the well. Sisi grabbed at his pants. This'll quench my thirst for sure. Civilization yelled. Get your hands off my pants. Absolute madness. He was convinced that this demoness was testing him, and he would not let a bit of beauty make him reveal a flaw. Main character energy indeed. So he grabbed her and dragged her toward the well, feigning surprise at her strength, and with a splash both of them tumbled into the well. He thought that now in the water she would not be able to test him. Talk about a dramatic escape. Above ground, Hai Gong fumed, cursing that no one ever followed his plan. but a chirping bird flew past, catching his attention. Meanwhile, Jiarani was absolutely furious. He berated his son for visiting a brothel and getting caught by the Empress, which caused his own demotion 3 ranks. Zheng Dao tried to explain, blaming civilization for humiliating him before the Empress. But Jiarani retorted that being outsmarted by a powerless eunuch only proved how useless he was. Nevertheless, he acknowledged Zheng Dao as his son and vowed to settle the score with civilization. Zheng Dao quickly praised his father. Jiarani grounded him for 3 months, ordering him to study and stay out of trouble. But then he noticed something odd. He asked about Zheng Dao's leg injury. The servant replied that civilization had stabbed him with a dagger. The servant produced the very dagger, having preserved it as evidence. Jiarani examined it closely. He recognized the mark of the Tianlian sect on the handle. In the 14th year of the Chuyuan era, a devastating flood left countless refugees homeless, with dikes collapsing, and the northern lands of the Wu dynasty yielding no harvest. Legend has it that a saint, riding a white donkey, came from the west, and with a wave of his sleeve, could produce food to aid the victims and guide the souls of the dead. But the corrupt local officials, unable to tolerate the saint's charity, sent soldiers and constables to arrest both him and the refugees. To their surprise, the saint's white donkey transformed into a peerless strongman, who drove away the government lackeys and saved thousands of people. From then on, the Tianlian sect rose, and the saint appeared. Believers in life would find happiness, and believers in death would reach the Pure Land. Jiarani presented the findings of the Dawuwei investigation, concluding that this was the origin of the Tianlian sect, and his servant immediately labeled it rebellion and treason. Jiarani agreed, adding that the Tianlian sect seemed to have deep ties with the Wen family. The servant said he would prepare the sedan chair, but Jiarani was in no hurry, noting that a single dagger was not sufficient evidence. He offered 100 silver taels as a reward for anyone who could provide key information on the young master of the Wen family, but the servant thought it was too little. Jiarani retorted that 100 taels was nearly half his monthly salary, to which the servant reminded him that he was the minister of both the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Revenue. Relenting, Jiarani said he had another 10 taels hidden in his shoe, but insisted his wife must not know, and the servant assured him it was enough. The servant suggested he should simply embezzle more, noting that the reward for the Minister of Rights, lost dog, was 4,000 taels. Jiarani scoffed at the notion of money. He declared his plan to expose the Wen family's conspiracy before the emperor at a banquet in 3 days, which would restore his rank and allow him to become a prince consort, bringing wealth. With a dark thought, Jiarani vowed to kill Wen Ming, for both public and private reasons. The scene shifted to the well where Wen Ming and Si Si had fallen. Wen Ming thought he was clever for escaping the madwoman's test by jumping into the well, but then he realized she had actually passed out, and exclaimed in shock. He worried that if she died, Empress Wu Xin would never forgive him. So he grabbed the rope and pulled Si Si out of the water. Exhausted, he panted, and regretted dragging her into the well in the first place. He called out to her, afraid she might be dead. Relieved to find she still had a pulse, but frustrated she showed no sign of waking up. Determined, he prepared to take action. Thanks to his pre-transmigration first aid knowledge, he was eager to try CPR for real. He could not help noticing that this crazy woman was even more well-endowed than Empress Wu Xin, but he quickly scolded himself, remembering he was a eunuch and should only be loyal to his empress. After she coughed up water but remained unconscious, he concluded he had to move to the next step. He tried to remember if he needed to tilt her chin back. Si Si vaguely whispered his name, while Wen Ming urged himself to keep going and not let her die, and she wondered why he looked so anxious. As Si Si thought that someone who should hate her was showing such concern, Wen Ming declared he would give her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Si Si suddenly came to and, in a panic, decked Wen Ming across the face, demanding to know what he thought he was doing to her. Talk about a rude awakening. Wen Ming tried to explain he was saving her life, but Si Si was not buying it. She had never heard of kissing as a rescue method, and even that woman had not taught her that. Brushing it off, Wen Ming just said, well, at least she was alive, and that was what mattered. But Si Si's mind raced. After being hit, he still seemed concerned. Maybe he actually liked her, but that would complicate things with Empress Wu Xin. Wen Ming pointed out it was late and suggested they dry off and head back to rest. Seeing her still spaced out, he added, what was she waiting for? Si Si snapped out of it and told him sternly to please stop making things difficult for Her Majesty. Wen Ming was completely taken aback. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to the palace's internal affairs office, specifically Eunuch Hai's quarters. Eunuch Hai received a secret letter. In 3 days, when the northern barbarian envoys arrived, he was to poison the imperial feast and cause chaos. He scoffed at the plan. The empress's banquets were heavily guarded with silver needles and food tasters. Poison alone seemed laughable. But then a figure appeared, assuring him that the prince had everything covered. Eunuch Hai recognized him instantly as Huang Tianli. Haigong remarked that the prince must be quite confident to have deployed Tianli himself. Tianli humbly responded that they were both indispensable to the prince's scheme. He offered to stay in the capital to aid Haigong, who politely thanked him. But inwardly, Haigong wondered if the prince had sent Tianli to spy on him. Just then, Tianli produced a poison, claiming it was colorless and odorless, undetectable even by silver needles. Haigong pointed out that eunuchs and maids always taste the food first, but Tianli assured him this poison was specially made, taking at least half a day to take effect. The poison would cause the lungs to wither like autumn leaves, leading to a slow, irreversible suffocation. Once taken, there was no escape. Haigong gasped in shock at such a lethal poison and demanded to know its name. With a smirk, Tianli revealed it was called Baicao, the herbal killer. 7 days later, in the royal garden, Sisi lay on the ground, completely out of breath. She grumbled about having to pull weeds when she was a genius, even if it was for the upcoming envoy from the northern barbarians. Her eyes landed on Civilization, who was sitting idle, looking suspicious. Sisi crept up behind him and called him out for slacking off. Civilization jumped and nervously claimed he was just taking a short break. But Sisi was not fooled. She demanded to see what he was hiding. Civilization quickly explained it was just notes on handling the northern envoy. Internally, Sisi suspected he might be trying to reach his father through the envoy instead. She called his bluff and lunged to grab the paper. Civilization pleaded with her not to. But Sisi was stronger and pinned him down, declaring she would not let him off this time. Frustrated, Civilization could not help but notice how annoyingly good the demoness's figure was. He realized that staying in this position would definitely expose the fact that he was not a eunuch, but shifting would blow his cover for the intelligence he was gathering for Lu Ruyan. Caught between two disasters, he had no idea what to do. Just then, a voice rang out, announcing the arrival of the female emperor. Wu Xin appeared and saw the two of them in a compromising position, clearly flustered. She demanded to know what they were doing in broad daylight. Sisi immediately claimed she suspected Civilization was up to something harmful. Wu Xin asked if Sisi was telling the truth. Civilization vehemently denied it, asking how he could ever plot against her. He even offered to let them search him, saying there was nothing strange on him. Sisi began to doubt herself, but Sisi was not fully convinced, suggesting it could be hidden in his clothing lining. Civilization protested that it was inappropriate to do such a search in front of the Empress. Wu Xin gave Sisi a firm knock on the head. She told Sisi to stop bullying Civilization and ordered her to come along, pulling her ear. Once they were gone, Civilization heaved a sigh of relief, thinking that if he had not practiced his Kegel exercises daily, he would have been exposed. But he knew the 7-day deadline was nearly up, and he really needed to go exchange for the antidote from Lu Ruyan. Holding the palace defense map, Civilization silently hoped it would be enough to win Lu Ruyan's trust. Meanwhile, Haigong was deep in thought, worrying that if the prince succeeded with the poison, his own plans would be ruined. He needed to find the Wen family's cultivation method before anyone caught on. At the palace gate, Civilization casually told the guard that Haigong had sent him to buy supplies for the northern envoy, and the guard waved him through without a second thought. Thanking the guard, Civilization slipped out. But little did he know, Haigong was watching from the shadows, suspicious of why the young man was using his name to leave the palace. It did not take long for the eunuch to piece it together. Civilization was definitely heading out to search for his family's secret technique. A stroke of luck, Haigong thought, feeling that the heavens were on his side. His grand scheme was about to come together. Back inside the palace, Empress Wu Xin ordered her attendants to wait outside as she entered her private chambers. Seated at the table, she told Sisi that after days of monitoring Civilization with no signs of trouble, maybe he was innocent after all. But Sisi was not convinced. She insisted that the guy was definitely hiding something, and that they could not let their guard down. Having caught him acting suspicious multiple times, she just needed more time to catch him red-handed. In response, Wu Xin let out a long, thoughtful "oh." Calling attention to her unusual persistence, Wu Xin remarked that it was rare for Sisi to keep going after so many failed attempts, to which Sisi replied that she only wanted to help. Finally, Wu Xin asked if Sisi had developed feelings for Civilization. Sisi's eyes went wide and she practically screamed, "What? How is that even possible? Talk about a denial that came straight from the gut." She immediately went on a defensive rampage, insisting there was no way she'd ever like that guy, calling him a eunuch and declaring he was not worthy of her genius self. "Wow, the lady doth protest too much, huh?" Wu Xin just smiled knowingly and said she understood, leaving Sisi confused and asking, "Sister Wu Xin?" as if hoping for clarification. Wu Xin calmly pointed out that Civilization was indeed smart and handsome, and even if Sisi did have feelings, she would not blame her. But Sisi kept insisting she was not listening. Talk about a one-sided conversation. Sisi finally asked if Wu Xin had called her over for something more serious than petty jealousy. Wu Xin admitted the real reason was to discuss how to handle the northern barbarian envoys, and Sisi, with a sigh, said she figured as much. Wu Xin explained the situation. The Genbeiho had rebelled, but the northern barbarians had not taken advantage of the chaos. Instead, they'd sent envoys, which was highly suspicious. Something definitely did not add up. With a confident grin, Sisi said she'd already thought of that, and proudly presented a map of the kingdom. Wu Xin asked if it was their country's map. Wu Xin pointed to Yanyun Pass, the key stronghold held by the rebellious Marquis. Now that it was lost, both the barbarians and the Marquis were sitting still, which was unnerving. Sisi laid out her deduction. The rebellion was so sudden that the Marquis had not even warned his son Civilization to leave. Once the barbarians marched south, the Emperor would definitely order Civilization's execution, she continued, reasoning that the cunning Marquis knew the Emperor valued loyalty and would not kill Civilization immediately, which explained why the barbarians were acting so strangely. Wu Xin had to agree. But Wu Xin pointed out the contradiction. If Civilization was in the capital, the Marquis would be at a stalemate. Sisi smiled and said, "That is exactly why the barbarians came." With a dramatic flourish, Sisi declared that the truth was obvious. The envoys were not here to negotiate at all. Their real mission was to secretly rescue Civilization. Talk about a big brain move. Wu Xin was shocked by the depth of the plot and immediately called for her trusted subordinate, Wei Jueyao, who responded promptly. She asked if the barbarian envoys had already entered the city and how long until they arrived at the palace, but Jueyao reported that the 3 envoys had not followed the planned route. Instead, they had diverted to a place called Chonghua Pavilion. Both Wu Xin and Sisi exclaimed in unison, "Chonghua Pavilion." The shock was real. Sisi's eyes lit up as she declared she finally understood everything. She urged Wu Xin to go there immediately, insisting that the truth was waiting at Chonghua Pavilion. Meanwhile, at the very same pavilion, Civilization found himself surrounded by flirtatious women. He quickly said he was just looking for someone and would leave right away. The ladies tried to coax him into staying, teasing him to have a few drinks first. Civilization thought to himself that no matter how many times he came here, it was always too intense. He had to grab the antidote and get out fast. Suddenly, a rough voice shouted, demanding to see the person in charge. A thug barked at the crowd to make way for his master. The northern barbarian ambassador Bator stepped in and asked if this was the famous Chonghua Pavilion, the best in the capital. The madam welcomed them warmly, but one of the barbarians immediately demanded the most beautiful women, complaining that the 2 barbarian lords had been waiting too long. The madam nervously agreed and said she'd arrange everything, inviting them inside. But under her breath, she whispered to a maid to prepare the guards and also notify the authorities, because these guys did not look like good news. Meanwhile, the deputy envoy Obu reminded Bator not to forget their real mission. Bator grumbled that even a condemned man deserves a good last meal. Bator's eyes then fell on a particular lady, Ruyan, and he started sizing her up. Bator grabbed Ruyan and insisted she come with him, ignoring her protests. From a distance, Civilization noticed the trio's barbarian attire and identified them as northerners. A thug spotted him staring and threatened to gouge his eyes out. Civilization backed off, claiming he had nothing to do with the girl. The thug sneered, calling all Wuchao people cowards. Civilization figured they were just ordinary barbarians, not the envoys he needed to interrogate. But then the poison struck. Civilization felt an unbearable pressure below and knew he was running out of time as Haigong, tailing him secretly, realized with a smirk that the secret manual must be hidden in this very pavilion. Civilization whispered desperately to Ruyan, begging her to save him before he lost control. Just then, Ruyan burst out of her room, and Civilization crashed into her. Both cried out in surprise. Ruyan scolded him for his carelessness, and he retorted that she should not have been behind the door. She ordered him to get up, hinting there was more to discuss. She warned him to control his third leg or she would make him a real eunuch. He shot back that it was all thanks to her poison. He closed the door and said they would talk about that later. He handed over the palace defense map and begged for the antidote. Ruyan was impressed. He got it so quickly. She told him to eat the pill so she could question him about the palace situation. As he swallowed the antidote, Civilization felt a wave of relief, thinking he was finally free from her control. But the door behind him swung open, and he stumbled, losing the precious pill. His cry of despair echoed as the antidote fell to the floor. It was Bator who had opened the door, stepping into the room with an air of authority. Bator asked if this was the most beautiful girl in the pavilion, while Civilization, hidden under the doorframe, cursed the terrible timing. Bator leered and declared that the central plains were full of beauties demanding a good look. Talk about making an entrance. Feigning surprise, Ruyan asked if they were guests, and complained about their sudden intrusion troubling her. The pavilion madam quickly instructed Ruyan to treat these generous guests well. Inwardly, Ruyan cursed the madam for her terrible timing, calling her a money-grubbing old woman. Thinking fast, she kicked the defense map and a pill under the bed to keep them hidden. Civilization, hiding under the bed, mentally cursed Ruyan for kicking his antidote away. What terrible luck. With a sweet smile, Ruyan invited the guests in for some wine. When a subordinate questioned a noise under the bed, she smoothly dismissed it as mice. Civilization congratulated himself on being flexible enough to remain hidden. Ruyan mentally warned him to behave or he would be dead, but he retorted that it was her fault he lost the antidote. She thought he always brought trouble, but he was her only inside contact in the palace, so she had to tolerate it. She offered to dance for their entertainment, and even mentioned she was skilled at massage, while a guest eagerly demanded a dance. Meanwhile, Civilization spotted the Wen family's cultivation techniques and pills nearby, confirming his target. He stretched his hand out, just a little more to reach the antidote near the map. Suddenly, Obu roared in anger, calling someone a bastard. Talk about an explosive reaction. Obu accused Ruyan of taking them for fools, while she pretended ignorance. Civilization realized they had found him out. Obu pointed to a shadow under the door, and accused the pavilion of spying on them, demanding an explanation. Ruyan was caught off guard. A subordinate approached the door and mocked the Wu dynasty for hiding, ordering them to come out. Just then, Haigong burst in and knocked the subordinate flying with a cry. Classic villain entrance. Haigong declared that since they were discovered, he might as well take the map by force. He shouted that these mere guests would not ruin his plan for limb regeneration. Obu identified him as an 8th-rank martial artist possibly sent by Wu to kill them, and Batur condemned the Wu for even assassinating envoys. Haigong slipped past them and snatched the fallen map with a crack. He exulted that he had finally succeeded in obtaining the map. Batur attacked him, demanding if he thought he could just leave after causing chaos, reminding him that he was facing the first warrior of the northern barbarians. Haigong retaliated with murderous intent, shouting that Batur was seeking death. From under the bed, Civilization wondered what kind of gods these were. Seriously, why did everyone have to fight over his antidote? Haigong used a sinister technique, the dark tendon soul-crushing palm, striking Batur in the chest and causing the map to fall again. Obu took advantage and punched Haigong in the stomach, shouting an insult. Haigong endured the pain and grabbed Obu's fist, locking it in place. From under the bed, Civilization saw the map and pill land right next to him, and he could not help but think, haha, they are back. Talk about a stroke of luck. Batur mocked Haigong, asking why such a strong and agile old man would even need limb regeneration. Haigong shot back, saying they understood nothing. His pain was far beyond their imagination. Then, with a flash, Haigong unleashed a powerful technique, sending a shockwave of light that blasted everyone away. Even Ruyan was caught in the blast, coughing and wondering why she got hit too. Haigong quickly grabbed the map and pill, muttering that the move took too much out of him and he could not stay. Batur could only curse in frustration. He laughed maniacally, shouting that no one could stop him as he made his escape. But Batur was not about to let him get away after showing off, he yelled. You think you can just run after that? Drawing a knife from who knows where, Batur executed the northern porcelain blade technique, the crescent moon slash. Ruyan mentally asked where he even kept that knife. Just then a sharp voice pierced the air. It was Sisi shouting, "How dare you brawl in broad daylight?" Back in Ruyan's room, she complained about these crazy people stealing her map and giving her internal injuries. Suddenly, an arm reached out from under the bed and grabbed her. It was Civilization, his poison finally taking effect, because he never got the antidote. Ruyan exclaimed, "Your poison's acting up." Batur's eyes widened as he recognized the woman before him. It was Empress Wu Xin. Obu warned him to be careful, suspecting the assassin was her doing, but Batur scoffed and said they could fight her if needed. Before they could react, Wu Xin teleported right behind them, catching them completely off guard. Both Batur and Obu spun around in shock, demanding to know when she had gotten behind them. Wu Xin ordered the Imperial Guards to surround the entire Qinghua building, declaring that not even a fly should escape. She worried aloud that if Civilization was not there, the civil officials would complain, but Sisi confidently volunteered to silence them, insisting that finding evidence of his collusion with the northern barbarians was the priority. Batur shouted for them to wait, drawing startled looks from Wu Xin and Sisi. He demanded to know what they were playing at, asking if they had not come to arrest him and his companion. Wu Xin raised an eyebrow, remarking that she had not noticed a savage was also present. Sisi explained that Batur and Obu were northern barbarian envoys who had been there for a while and had just been fighting with someone, and Wu Xin casually admitted she had not been paying attention. Claiming she had no time for them, Wu Xin ordered the guards to take them back to the palace to rest, leaving Batur utterly stunned. Batur fumed inwardly, calling the Empress a fool, and decided that since they had already met, he might as well advance their plan. Obu patted his shoulder and cautioned him, reminding him that the Empress was a 9th-rank martial artist, and that they should not act rashly before the plan was ready. Batur huffed in frustration and called for his companion to leave. Sisi expressed her concern to Wu Xin about the envoys having fought in the streets and possibly colluded with Civilization, advising caution, but Wu Xin said she had already sensed the savages' killing intent. Sisi asked why she had not dealt with them then, and Wu Xin paused. She replied with cold arrogance that the killing intent of ants posed no threat to a dragon. Sisi was left in awe of the Empress's overwhelming aura. Wu Xin reiterated that they were looking for Civilization, and that the two savages could be kept under watch in the palace, and Sisi eagerly agreed. The scene shifted inside the Changhua building, where Sisi ordered the Imperial Guards to clear out the bystanders. She commanded them to search every single room without missing a single corner. Wu Xin muttered to herself, hoping that Civilization would not disappoint her. In Ruyan's room, Civilization woke up with tears in his eyes, confused about what had happened to him. He realized that the poison had taken effect, and he had passed out. Then it hit him. The poison had acted up, and he panicked. He quickly checked himself and sighed in relief that his body was still intact. But as his hand touched the blanket, he felt something strange beneath it. He pulled the blanket open and found an angry Ruyan lying there with him. Blinking in disbelief, he closed the blanket again, thinking he must have opened it wrong. When he opened it a second time, she was still there, and he was utterly dumbfounded. Civilization was completely flustered, muttering that no matter how many times he opened the blanket, it was still wrong. But Ruyan was not having any of it, angrily accusing him of getting what he wanted and then trying to walk away without taking responsibility. She fumed about how she, the respected saintess of the Tianlian sect, had been robbed of her innocence by a fake eunuch. Talk about a plot twist. Civilization argued back that she was way stronger than him, so how could he have overpowered her even under the poison's influence? Ruyan shot back that she had been wounded earlier and lacked the strength to fight back. Internally, Ruyan resolved that this secret must never leave this room. She would have to kill the fake eunuch to protect her honor. But suddenly, Civilization caught on to something. He grabbed Ruyan and pinned her against the wall, leaving her gasping in surprise. Ruyan protested that she had not even made a move yet, but Civilization revealed that he had heard her plan to kill him. Talk about a big brain move. Ruyan was shocked that he could hear her thoughts. Could the legend of the Tianlian Saintess actually be real? Civilization smirked and confirmed that yes, he had heard that last thought too. Civilization demanded to know about this so-called Saintess legend. Ruyan gritted her teeth, admitting that he had truly come out ahead this time. She reluctantly explained the rumor. After a Saintess of the Tianlian sect sleeps with a man, not only does she share her cultivation power, but the two become mentally linked. And apparently, it was all true. Civilization felt the new strength surging through his body, and realized he had inherited her cultivation. Talk about a power-up. With this newfound strength, his mind started racing with possibilities. He declared that with this power the capital could not cage him anymore. Dad, I am coming to join your rebellion. But Ruyan shouted for him to stop. Ruyan shouted that he was forcing her hand, and that he could not just walk away scot-free. With that, she stomped her foot on the bed frame. Suddenly, Civilization cried out as his own foot started hurting. Ruyan grinned, explaining that since they were now linked by the Tianlian technique, their bodies were bound together. What hurts her, hurts him. Absolute savage. Since her cultivation had transferred to him, Ruyan declared that he would have to carry out her mission of spying on the Wu dynasty. Civilization hesitated, asking what if he refused to cooperate. Ruyan's eyes turned cold, warning that if the mission failed, she would make sure he died alongside her. A chilling threat. Civilization froze, completely taken aback by her deadly seriousness. Ruyan pressed her dire situation. As a holy maiden who had lost her purity, failing the mission meant only death. She threatened to die together if he would not continue as a spy, making Civilization panic and beg her to calm down. He grumbled that finding his father outside the pass would accomplish the sect's goal anyway, so making him spy was a waste of talent. But Ruyan insisted he must stay inside the palace, and he demanded to know why. She explained that helping the Zhenbei Marquis become emperor would just swap one oppressor for another. The Tianlian sect sought true fairness. Civilization laughed at her impractical idealism. Suddenly, loud banging on the door announced the Da Wu Wei on official business. The guards demanded entry, stating this was the last room where the Barbarian envoy had been seen. Sisi acknowledged the order. Sisi reasoned that the lack of response meant Civilization was definitely inside. She commanded her men to surround the room and guard every possible exit. The soldiers fanned out, encircling the building. A mouse squeaked from the corner. Sisi slammed her massive hammer down on the mouse with a loud crash. She declared that Civilization had no way to escape now. Wu Xin asked if this was the last room, and Sisi confirmed. Sisi kicked the door open and announced the room inspection. Ruyan, lying on the bed behind a curtain, apologized for her state, playing the helpless courtesan. Sisi ordered a thorough search, and the soldiers began. Wu Xin directly asked if Ruyan had seen Civilization, and Ruyan denied it. Ruyan asked if there was anything else, and Sisi hesitated. Without warning, Sisi pulled open the bed curtains, startling Ruyan. Sisi declared the bed suspicious and began searching. Ruyan offered to give Sisi some gifts, but Sisi refused. Sisi also criticized Ruyan's indecent clothing. Finding no one in the bed, Sisi considered Civilization's habits. She concluded he must be under the bed, and Ruyan panicked. But when Sisi looked under, it was empty. She was puzzled, as her deduction seemed flawless. Civilization, clinging to the ceiling, thought that absorbing Liu Ruyan's power had saved him. Sisi insisted there must be a hidden passage. Ruyan complained as Sisi rummaged through her belongings. A tiny creak echoed from the ceiling, and Sisi's head shot up. She narrowed her eyes. What was that sound? Civilization's blood ran cold. He was about to be caught, but Ruyan quickly thought to him, I will cover for you. Use the butterfly step when you get a chance. Sisi turned her gaze to the bed canopy. Could he be hiding above the bed? Ruyan let out a dramatic sigh and complained about wrinkling her bedding. As Ruyan shook out the blanket, Sisi snapped. Why are you suddenly shaking that blanket? Ruyan pouted. It is my favorite blanket. Sisi warned her not to make any sudden moves. Meanwhile, Civilization silently slid under the bed, seizing the distraction. Checking the bed canopy, Sisi found no one. She muttered, no one above either. My genius reasoning cannot be wrong. Frustrated, Sisi ordered Ruyan aside. Fine, move. I am tearing this whole bed apart. Ruyan blinked in confusion. Both Ruyan and Civilization were struck by the same panicked thought. Oh crap. Just then, a calm but firm voice cut through the chaos. Wu Xin stepped forward and said, Enough. Stop. She reminded them. My father always told me never to damage people's property for personal reasons. Sisi looked down, shamefaced. Wu Xin. Wu Xin gestured to the room. We've made enough of a scene today. Before we leave, pay the innkeeper for the damages. She ordered the team to withdraw. Sisi nodded reluctantly. Got it. Ruyan stayed silent, relief hidden in her eyes. As the footsteps faded, Civilization let out a long breath from under the bed. Finally, I am safe. Talk about a narrow escape. That night, in the secret residence of Eunuch Hai, a subordinate carefully bandaged his wounds. Haigong clutched a scroll, a triumphant smirk spreading across his face. At last, I have the Wen family's secret martial art. Talk about a villain getting a dangerous power-up. Haigong unrolled the scroll eagerly, but his eyes went wide in disbelief. This is. It was not the secret martial art he expected, but a complete palace defense map. How is this possible? Talk about a bait and switch. Fuming, he realized he'd been tricked. I was supposed to get the Wen family's secret art, cursed that Wen Ming for deceiving me. He'd been played, but then he spotted another drawing hidden among the papers. His eyes narrowed. What is this? A sudden, sinister laugh escaped him. Ha ha ha. So that is it. The pieces were clicking together. He overlapped the palace map with a human meridian chart. Genius. He would use the map to simulate his own energy channels. The East Palace Gate is the abdomen. The West Arrow Tower is the Qi Si. He mapped the palace architecture directly onto his body. With a determined motion, he struck the acupoints corresponding to the map, triggering a breakthrough. And to top it off, he took out the Wen family's secret pill and swallowed it whole. As the pill took effect, his body transformed. Ah, such a mysterious feeling. Yin and yang merge, heaven and earth reverse. A servant pointed out his nose bleeding. You fool. This is old blood being expelled for new bones. Total body reforging. With a shout, he slammed his fist into the ground. The whole room shook from the impact. See that? This is the wonder of using the palace as a body and the pill as a guide. His meridian pulse was through the roof, but then his body went haywire, coughing blood as he flew up to the ceiling before crashing down. A violent reaction. Yet, he laughed maniacally, blood streaming down his face. I have done it. I have succeeded. With his newfound power, he vowed revenge. Within 3 days, I will regenerate my limbs. Then everyone who humiliated me, Wu Xin, that fake prince, the whole Wu dynasty, will pay. This upcoming negotiation banquet will be the start of my revenge. The entire Wu dynasty will be mine. Talk about main villain energy. Back in Ruyan's room, the guests had cleared out. She called out, They are gone. You can come out now. Civilization emerged grinning. Great minds think alike. We hid perfectly. He thanked her and made a promise. I will never forget this favor. Once my dad levels the capital, I will come back and marry you properly. Classic. But Ruyan stopped him cold, a dagger in her hand. Hold it. Not so fast. She threatened him, demanding he continue spying. I told you, stay undercover in the palace, or else. Civilization immediately backed down, tears in his eyes. Please, put the dagger down. I will do it. I will do it. But what exactly do you need me to do? I cannot be a spy forever. Right? Ruyan revealed the true mission. Have you heard the legend of the Wu dynasty's dragon vein? When the dynasty began, the Wu family sealed a real dragon, creating a dragon vein. Its fortune let them unify half the land and build a stable kingdom. But after 100 years the dynasty is corrupt and the people suffer. The dragon vein still protects the rulers, making rebellion impossible. My task is to find that dragon vein and destroy it. Civilization could not help but think, this plot sounds like another Eunuch story I read. Talk about genre crossover. Ruyan heard his thoughts. What? Another Eunuch? What crossover? He covered up quickly. Nothing. Just a novel. Go on. Internally he panicked. He forgot she could read minds. She warned him. You've inherited my full power, so it is only right you complete this mission for me. It was only fitting that he complete this task for her and restore a clear sky to the people. Civilization nodded. All right, I get it. Just find the dragon vein. But Ruyan added another condition. After their union, the mark of the Tianlian sect had been transferred to him. He must search carefully and not get caught while undercover. Taken aback, he exclaimed. The Tianlian sect has such hardcore rules. Shrugging, he muttered. Fine. If the mark is discovered here, I am already guilty enough. After sighing about his bad luck, he was interrupted by Ruyan's wait. Turning back, he asked what else there was. She advised him to be careful when searching for the dragon vein. He wondered if she was actually worried about him. She snapped. Bastard. I just do not want to suffer if you die. He assured her he'd finish the mission and bolt, not causing trouble. She told him to get lost. Alone, Ruyan fumed internally, calling him a bastard, idiot, and clueless fool. But civilization heard her thoughts. Stupid woman did not. You know I can hear you too. That night, back inside the palace, civilization glided over the rooftops, smugly noting how his martial arts made sneaking into the imperial palace a breeze. But Ruyan's voice echoed in his mind, warning him not to let his success go to his head. He grumbled an admission that he knew. He complained that finding the legendary dragon vein was no overnight task, and he'd never even heard of it in all his years. But Ruyan was firm. 1 month, no excuses. He pointed out that they could not even confirm the dragon vein was in the capital, let alone what it looked like. How was he supposed to find it? He asked. Tapping the solid walls, he wondered if the treasure was hidden inside the masonry. He then checked the well, a classic hiding place for secrets. Or perhaps that nondescript flower bed along the path. His search was interrupted by a pair of cats making mischief, and one black cat lunged at his face. He yelped, insisting he had not meant to bother them, and that he had no interest in felines. Not far away, Sisi wandered with a gloomy expression, muttering about how suspicious civilization was, yet she still could not find any solid evidence against him. Suddenly, she heard civilization's voice yelling at a cat to stop running. Civilization grumbled that he'd call it a day, while Sisi, spying from the shadows, wondered why he was skulking around here. Sisi resolved to catch him red-handed, but civilization simply muttered that it was time to head back for a bath and bed. Back at his quarters in the Palace of Respect, civilization was about to turn in. Sisi, still hidden, was frustrated that he was just going to sleep after all her stalking. Had he spotted her? He sighed in relief, grateful that the pink-haired demoness was not around. Sinking into the bath, he finally relaxed, but Ruyan's sharp telepathic voice cut in, scolding him for slacking off so soon. He argued that the palace was enormous, and he'd already searched everywhere his low status allowed. Ruyan retorted that aimless searching would not work, and that he needed to find leads around the Empress. He assured her he'd get it done, just in his own way. Sisi, eavesdropping from a corner, caught that last word and grinned. Mission. So you are definitely up to something. This genius will catch you in the act. Ruyan expressed her confidence but insisted on adding some extra motivation for efficiency. She declared that a little pain was nothing for the mission, but then panicked, yelling, "Wait, what are you doing? Do not you dare." She pricked her own hand with a needle, and through their connection, civilization felt the sting. "That is your reminder," she hissed. Outside, Sisi wondered why it had gone so quiet. Suddenly, civilization burst out, clutching his hand, and howling in agony, crashing straight into Sisi. Both yelped. They both tumbled to the ground, lying flat and stunned into silence. Civilization's mind raced, wondering what Sisi was doing there. Sisi's mind churned with suspicion, convinced that civilization had been spying on her bath to verify her identity. Civilization steeled himself, determined not to let her notice anything off. While Sisi groaned on the floor, civilization scrambled to flee, but Sisi yelled after him, cursing him for the collision. But he quickly turned the accusation around on her, playfully calling her out for peeping at his bath. Talk about a slick move. Sisi shrieked, claiming his bathwater had contaminated her eyes while he hurriedly pulled on his pants. Eyes still shut, Sisi grabbed hold of his pants, determined not to let him escape. "Why are you grabbing my pants?" he protested. She insisted he had purposely splashed her to cover something up. This time, she vowed, he would not wriggle out of it. She accidentally grabbed a handful of something sensitive, and he let out a pained yelp. Not again, he cried as she asked what that thing was. Elsewhere, at the northern Barbarian envoy's residence, Detox sat drinking alone. He grumbled that the Wu court's buildings were fancier than northern yurts, but the wine was far too weak. Obu reminded him they had not come all this way for the alcohol. But Batter conceded that the Wu Empress was truly impressive, her power unfathomable. He could not guarantee their mission would succeed. Obu assured him they were not the only ones who wanted the Empress dead. Detox raised an eyebrow, and behind them, a small rift began to open. From that crack stepped a figure, Tianli himself. Obu greeted Tianli, recognizing him as the prince's agent, and asked directly what urgent business brought him here. Tianli smirked and praised the grassland warriors' sharp senses for spotting him so quickly. He then revealed his true purpose. The prince had everything set for the assassination at the feast, and after it was done, the Khan must keep his word. Obu nodded, stating that as long as the prince ceded the Yanyun territories, the Khan would agree to eternal peace. Detox just snorted in disbelief. Tianli chuckled and confirmed that the prince shared the same intention. With that settled, Tianli said the prince would be waiting for the show at the banquet, and Obu cheerfully agreed. But Batter growled a warning that the people of the Wu dynasty were too cunning. Obu shot back that the Khan was no fool, and had already considered that. Obu pointed out that while the prince plotted against the northern barbarians, they too were scheming against the Wu dynasty. A game of mutual deception. The scene shifted to Civilization, who was suddenly hugged by Sisi. She demanded to know what he was hiding on his person. Panic flooded his mind. If she found out, everything would be ruined. He had to come up with a lie fast. He stammered something about how hard it was to scrub his own back in the bath, but Sisi was not convinced, so he claimed he had combined a towel with a wooden stick to create the so-called no-manual bath brush. Quite the improvisation. Sisi laughed, calling him dumb but crafty when it came to convenience. He played it cool, saying it was just a random idea. Then she announced she wanted to bathe too and demanded to borrow his bath brush. He hesitated, saying sharing might not be hygienic, but inside he was screaming about how to produce a real one in such short notice. Sisi narrowed her eyes. The way he dodged the question, combined with his earlier talk about a mission, made her suspicious. Then it hit her. She knew. She was convinced the key to his mission was hidden in that so-called bath brush. Civilization saw her expression and knew she was onto his secret identity. Pressing her advantage, she urged him to hand it over quickly so she could bathe. He fumbled for words. She called him out on his guilty look. He knew he was about to be exposed. Desperate, he decided to fall back on an old trick. With no other option, he bit his own hand and splattered blood onto Sisi's face. She shrieked at the sight of blood and promptly fainted. Classic. He breathed a sigh of relief, grateful that his newfound internal power let him produce such a convincing amount of blood. He could not help but wonder just how many times he had to fake bleeding to deal with this madwoman. Meanwhile, at the Changhua Pavilion, the madam called for Ruyan, saying Boss Shen had specifically requested her company for drinks. Ruyan assured her madam she would take good care of the guest, and Boss Shen chuckled approvingly. She gracefully raised a cup and proposed a toast. The boss eagerly matched her gesture, but in a moment of clumsiness, she accidentally spilled her wine all over Boss Shen's face. The madam scolded her, thinking she had done it on purpose just because she did not like the man. Ruyan protested that it was all because of that damn eunuch, but instead of getting angry, Boss Shen grinned and said he appreciated that kind of treatment, leaving Ruyan and the madam completely dumbfounded. Talk about an unexpected plot twist. Back at the palace, Civilization sneezed loudly, blaming the cold for his misery after days of eating nothing but steamed buns as revenge from that crazy woman. On Sisi's unconscious form, he noticed something odd poking out of her sleeve. Picking it up, he realized it was a small bottle of medicine. This was his ticket to turning things around. 3 days later, the eunuch Haigong bustled about, ordering everyone to move quickly for the big day of the Wu dynasty. With a stern voice, he warned that anyone who embarrassed them would face his wrath, and the servants chorused their acknowledgement. From across the room, Haigong narrowed his eyes as he spotted Civilization doing something strange near the food. Munching on some decent food for a change, Civilization thought how good it was after 3 days of steamed buns. The eunuch approached coldly and called out, "Little Wen." Turning around, Civilization reported that he had finished testing the dishes for poison and would go help, and Haigong nodded approvingly. However, the head eunuch mentioned they were short-handed with serving dishes, so Civilization should lend a hand first. He agreed without hesitation. As soon as Civilization left with the food, Haigong casually poured poison into another dish. Classic underhanded move. 3 days earlier, Civilization had frantically worked to finish the bath brush before Sisi woke up, while she mumbled about blood in her sleep. Haigong stepped forward, declaring he had already tested the dish for poison, and ordered it to be served to the Empress. Classic underhanded move. In his mind, he gloated, thinking that today, the Wu dynasty would finally belong to him. The scene shifted to the palace banquet hall, bustling with noise and activity as nobles and officials took their seats. From across the hall, Zheng Dao spotted Civilization and blurted out his name in surprise. He turned to his father Jia Renyi, demanding to confront the brat right in front of the Empress. But Jia Renyi hissed at him to keep his voice down. Jia Renyi reminded him that this was a reception for the northern barbarian envoys, and any disputes had to wait until after the banquet. Zheng Dao grudgingly agreed. Civilization, meanwhile, was dragging himself through the event, thinking about how Sisi and Ruyan had been tormenting him and ruining his sleep. Unbeknownst to him, Sisi was hiding in a corner, watching his every move, convinced he was planning to meet with the barbarians. She was determined to catch him red-handed. Suddenly, Civilization felt a chill run down his spine. He whirled around, but no one was there. He wondered why he felt so uneasy, as if someone was plotting against him. And then Ruyan's voice echoed in his mind, confirming that she indeed had an eye on him. She scolded him for slacking off and failing to find the dragon vein. Civilization protested that he had searched everywhere but found nothing. Ruyan would not hear it, demanding he produce the clues by today. No excuses. She threatened to expose his lower half to the Empress if he did not comply. Civilization sighed, muttering about his rotten luck with women in this life. Sisi, still tailing him, smugly thought that he was finally making a move, just as she had predicted. She swore that despite his previous slip-ups, today she would gather solid evidence of his treason. Wu Xin, the Empress, noticed Sisi's intense focus on Civilization, and began to wonder if there was really something going on between them. Haigong approached Wu Xin and informed her that everything was ready for the feast. She nodded and gave the signal to begin. He announced loudly that the Empress was taking her seat, and the banquet officially commenced. Bador, the northern envoy, laughed heartily, eager to dig into the dishes he had been craving. He complimented the Wu dynasty's cuisine, finding it excellent. Jirenyi muttered under his breath about the barbarians' lack of manners. Another official sarcastically remarked that the Minister of Rights, referring to Jirenyi's recent demotion, was absolutely right. Obu, the deputy envoy, whispered to Batur that it was time to proceed with their plan. Batur acknowledged. Obu rose from his seat, announcing that he had heard of the Wu dynasty's talent, and their Khan had prepared 3 riddles to test the court's wisdom. All eyes turned to him, surprised by the sudden challenge. Some officials muttered confidently that they could handle barbarian riddles with ease. Batur played along, asking the Empress for her permission to proceed. Wu Xin replied with regal confidence, stating that Wu dynasty feared no challenge from the north, and told him to go ahead. Obu chuckled darkly and began the first riddle. He described, "There are mountains but no rocks, rivers but no water, roads but no travelers, cities but no people. What is this thing?" The courtiers fell into a hubbub, baffled. How could a mountain exist without rocks? Such a thing was unheard of. On the first try, an official shouted that it was the desert, but Obu simply chuckled and said wrong. Another confidently guessed mountain forest, but Obu again dismissed it as incorrect. The court erupted in murmurs, with some wondering if such a bizarre thing even existed, and others accusing the barbarian of playing tricks. Amid the confusion, Civilization recognized it as a classic riddle from his childhood, and muttered the answer. A map. Before he could speak up, Sisi suddenly appeared beside him, slapping his shoulder and claiming she was about to guess the same thing. He yelped in pain and demanded to know where she came from, rubbing his sore shoulder. Meanwhile, Obu sneered that if a simple riddle could stump them, the Wu dynasty was not so impressive after all. But Sisi piped up loudly, blurting out the answer without hesitation. It is a map. The officials scoffed, calling her a random woman talking nonsense, and questioned who let her into the banquet. Even Wu Xin looked surprised, never expecting her ditzy friend to crack the first riddle. To everyone's shock, Obu grudgingly admitted that the answer was indeed a map, silencing the doubters instantly. Sisi basked in the credit, puffing out her chest, while Civilization muttered under his breath that it was actually his idea. But in his mind, he realized this distraction was the perfect chance to slip away and hunt for the dragon vein, just as Ruyan demanded. His hopes were short-lived, because Obu stepped forward with a sly grin, announcing that there were still 2 more riddles to go. The tension in the hall thickened as everyone braced for the next challenge, and Civilization knew his escape would have to wait. Sisi confidently declared that if there were 2 more riddles, she would crush them, boasting that she would make everyone submit to her genius today. Obu smirked and hoped she would still have that confidence after the next question. He then called out to Batur, who acknowledged with a curt nod. Batur raised a scroll, announcing that the second riddle was written on it. Sisi peered at the scroll, a look of confusion crossing her face. The scroll was covered in strange symbols. It was English, though she did not recognize it, muttering that it looked nothing like the scripts of the Celestial Kingdom. A crowd of officials buzzed, pushing to get a look at the mysterious writing. They murmured among themselves, some saying it resembled ghost scratches, others claiming it looked like symbols from foreign merchant caravans. One old scholar stroked his beard, claiming he would decipher its strange structure given time. Obu laughed loudly, mocking the so-called talented Wu Kingdom for not even understanding the question. Sisi shot back, insisting that she, as a genius, would definitely crack it. Obu gestured for her to proceed, thinking to himself that this foreign question was beyond their reach. Civilization's eyes widened as he recognized the writing. It was English, and he wondered how the barbarians knew it. Suddenly, Ruyan's voice echoed in his mind, teasing him for knowing foreign scripts, which made him jump and complain about her speaking in his head. She remarked that he had many secrets, but he quickly dismissed it as a wild guess. Obu taunted them, saying that the Wu people surely could not match the intelligence of the northern barbarians, earning a sharp retort from Sisi to shut up and let her think. Sisi racked her brain, frustrated that even her old teacher had not taught her these symbols. Then a thought struck her, and she spun around, shouting for Civilization to stop right there. She grabbed him, demanding where he thought he was going, while he protested, asking what she was doing. She argued that since he had answered the first riddle, he could certainly solve this one, though he found her logic ridiculous. Before he could object, she announced to the court that Civilization had volunteered to answer, despite his frantic denials. Zheng Dao stepped forward, anger in his voice, questioning how a mere eunuch could be so presumptuous. Jia Renyi, however, allowed it, saying that if the eunuch failed, they could punish him for his insolence, and Zheng Dao eagerly agreed. Sisi thought to herself that if Civilization were colluding with the barbarians, they would ensure he answered correctly and save the kingdom's face. Wu Xin asked him directly if he truly knew the answer, and Civilization stammered nervously. Zheng Dao seized the moment, telling him to kneel and confess if he was bluffing, while Civilization cursed him under his breath. Civilization turned the tables, demanding what Zheng Dao would do if he answered correctly, and Zheng Dao rashly promised to call him grandfather. Jia Renyi warned his son not to be impulsive, but Zheng Dao was confident he would ruin the eunuch this time. Civilization calmly picked up the scroll and began to explain that this was a common language from the West. He declared it was called English. The officials erupted in murmurs, asking what English was, and wondering if he actually knew the answer. Civilization silently thanked his luck that he had decent English skills before transmigrating, or he'd have been toast. He then translated the riddle for everyone, explaining that it asked what was the beginning of eternity, the beginning of end, and the end of every place. He continued, revealing that it was a simple word riddle, and the answer was obvious once you understood the phrasing. The answer, he declared, was the English letter E. The officials exchanged skeptical glances, some dismissing it as nonsense, others unsure. Zheng Dao seized the chance, accusing Civilization of trickery and demanding punishment. Even Batur found it hard to believe that a mere eunuch could know such a thing. But Obu stepped in, confirming that the eunuch was correct. The answer was indeed. The hall buzzed with astonishment, and Civilization could not help but puff up with pride. He turned to Zheng Dao, reminding him of their bet and demanding to be called grandfather. Jia Renyi sighed, telling his son to own up to his promise. With great reluctance, Zheng Dao muttered grandfather, and Civilization beamed, replying, "That is a good grandson." Not stopping there, Civilization cheekily told Jia Renyi and his good big son to step aside. Wu Xin watched him with a mix of curiosity and suspicion, wondering what other secrets he held. Meanwhile, Haigong cast a glance at Wu Xin as she unknowingly ate the poisoned dish. Sisi, convinced that the barbarians were protecting Civilization, fumed silently about their collusion. Obu then announced that there was one final riddle left for them to solve. Batur added that this final question would determine the future between their nations. He turned his gaze toward Wu Xin. The last riddle, he declared, must be presented by him personally to the Empress herself. Batur, the barbarian envoy, bowed and requested the Empress's permission to personally present the final riddle. But no sooner had he spoken than Chief Eunuch Hai erupted, accusing the barbarian of overstepping his bounds, and the other officials joined in, denouncing the uncivilized tribe for their audacity. Tao Si Si, however, dismissed their concerns, declaring that the Empress could easily answer any question, leaving Wen Ming puzzled by her confidence. Wen Ming quickly clarified that he would not dream of stealing the Empress's thunder, while Sisi insisted that serving Her Majesty was his honor. The Empress herself, Wu Xin, casually granted Batur permission, saying, "Just one question, bring it up." But privately, Wen Ming felt a strange unease, sensing that the whole affair was blown way out of proportion. He wondered silently why they had to make such a huge fuss over a single question. Suddenly, Ruyan's voice echoed in his mind, warning him that the envoy carried murderous intent, and Wen Ming was startled. He asked how she could sense it, and Ruyan replied that her years of roaming the martial world had sharpened her instincts. She elaborated that she had caught a flash of killing intent in the barbarian's eyes, and that with Wen Ming's cultivation, he should have felt it too. Wen Ming's thoughts turned to the Empress's safety, but Ruyan reassured him that with her strength, any assassination attempt would only backfire. Ruyan then warned him to be careful himself, since his weak cultivation might get him caught in the crossfire. Wen Ming teased if she was worried about him, but Ruyan retorted that she only cared about finding the dragon vein. Meanwhile, the Empress ordered the box to be opened. Curious to see the puzzle, Batter presented the box, bowing as he offered it to Her Majesty. But the moment the lid lifted, a dagger gleamed, and Batter snatched it, lunging at the Empress with a slap. "For the Khan, die," he roared. Wen Ming could not believe his eyes, but Ruyan's voice cut in. "What did I tell you?" Sisi screamed for guards to protect the Empress, shouting a warning. At that moment, the deputy envoy Obu hurled a smoke bomb, engulfing Sisi and the officials in thick smoke. Choking, Wen Ming muttered that the barbarians had come prepared. But the Empress remained unfazed, mocking the pathetic attempt and asking if they really thought it would work on her. Yet during the commotion, a strike grazed her hand, and she realized something was wrong. Dizziness hit her, and her body began to feel out of control. Bater sneered, noting that she had dodged even in that state, but he doubted the poison's potency, directing his frustration at Eunuch Hai. Haigong replied calmly that she was a 9th-rank martial artist and the poison just needed more time. Wu Xin connected the dots, realizing it was the food earlier. She turned to Haigong, demanding an explanation, asking why he would side with the northern barbarians after she treated him well. Haigong laughed bitterly, questioning her claim of kindness. He spat that if the Wu dynasty truly valued him, he would not have become a eunuch. Batur impatiently ordered Haigong to finish her off, but the eunuch snapped that he did not need a barbarian's reminder. With a roar of "Die," Batur charged, but the Empress defiantly called him a traitor. Haigong joined the assault, coldly warning the Empress that every movement only accelerated the poison's spread. Inside, the Empress felt her breath failing, realizing she could not keep this up. Even Batur was taken aback, marveling at how she could still fight with such a potent poison in her veins. Then he snarled, "Then try this." As he prepared a new attack, Wen Ming watched in horror, his mind racing. The Empress is poisoned, and he could not just stand by and watch her die. Suddenly, a figure intercepted Batur's blade with a bare hand. It was Zheng Dao, boasting that poison and hidden weapons were useless against his 100% immunity. He declared that anyone who wished to harm the Empress would have to go through him first. But Batur responded with a thunderous punch straight to Zheng Dao's face, sending him reeling. Zheng Dao yelped in pain, and Batur mocked him as nothing more than a windbag from the Wu dynasty. Retrieving his knife, Batur turned his gaze toward Wen Ming, sneering that it was now his turn. Sisi screamed in rage at the rebels, shouting that she would kill them all. Haigong sneered, calling her nothing but a reckless little girl without a lick of self-awareness. He launched a relentless assault against her, pressing the attack without mercy. Gathering a crushing force in his palm, Haigong struck Sisi square in the gut, sending her flying back with a pained cry. Sisi gasped, realizing the eunuch had been hiding his true strength all along. Haigong just chuckled, saying he'd recently had some epiphanies. Wu Xin thought bitterly that she could barely protect herself now. Sisi staying would only mean certain death. She decided she had to go all out to cover Sisi's escape. Haigong noticed her shift in focus and narrowed his eyes. Wu Xin declared she had forcibly suppressed the poison, but time was running out. She ordered Sisi to muster the Imperial Guards immediately. Sisi hesitated, asking about her safety, but Wu Xin cut her off firmly. "No arguments, that was an order," she added, remembering to take civilization out of this place as well. Wu Xin admitted she had wronged him in the past, and now she just wanted Sisi to get him somewhere safe. Sisi nodded, grabbed civilization, and said, "Follow me." Suddenly, Obu jumped in front of them, blocking the way. He growled that they would not be getting any reinforcements. Sisi clicked her tongue in frustration. She thought to herself that she was no match for this guy. But then Wu Xin flashed behind Obu and kicked him flying, clearing the path in one swift move. She shouted, "Now, go," and Sisi bolted. Sisi yelled at Civilization, "What are you waiting for? Run with me." Civilization replied that she could summon the guards alone. He had something to do. Sisi was stunned. She snapped at him, "Fine, go die then," and ran off. Civilization thought to himself that he could not just let Wu Xin die like this. He sent a telepathic message to Ruyan, asking her to help him take on the barbarian and the eunuch. Ruyan retorted, "Help you? Why? Would not the Empress's death be better for you?" Civilization argued that if the Empress died, the entire Wu kingdom would fall into chaos, and they might never find the dragon vein. He pressed on. If they help the Empress now, they'd have free reign in the palace, making it much easier to locate the dragon vein. Ruyan snorted, saying he was just using that as an excuse, because he could not forget his old flame. Civilization denied it hotly. Ruyan relented, agreeing to help just this once, purely for the dragon vein. She warned him not to screw it up. Civilization thanked her profusely. Batter laughed arrogantly, saying the Emperor of Wu was nothing special. Haigong added that she was merely a spent force, and wondered how much longer she could hold out. Wu Xin swore that even if it meant her death, she would take them both down with her. She gathered an immense force and unleashed a devastating palm strike that sent both Bater and Haigong hurtling backward. Spitting blood, Batter gapes in sheer disbelief at how the Empress can still unleash such monstrous power even now. But the effort takes its toll, as Wu Xin herself coughs up blood, her body pushed to its absolute limit. Picking himself up, Haigong cackles and admits that the Empress is indeed a formidable warrior. Boasting, the eunuch claims that if he had not recently broken through to a new level, he would not stand a chance. Wu Xin senses his aura, and realizes with a start that he has reached the 9th rank, scoffing as she questions whether a eunuch dares to aim for the pinnacle of power. But Haigong retorts that his condition is only temporary, claiming that once he fully masters his technique, he will be able to regenerate his lost parts. Then he declares with a maniacal laugh that when that day comes, the throne will be his. Just then, Civilization teleports behind Haigong and sneers, asking if a dead eunuch really thinks he can become emperor. Without hesitation, he drives a powerful punch into the eunuch's back, shouting for him to die. After taking a solid punch from Civilization, Haigong coughs up blood and roars about how his adopted son could treat him this way, considering he called him righteous father. But Civilization fires back without missing a beat, telling him he only pulled that card during the rebellion, just like his useless biological father. Wu Xin, clearly stunned, asks how Civilization even knows martial arts. He stammers it off, saying they can talk details later. Right now, dealing with the dead eunuch is the priority. Haigong sneers, pointing out that Civilization himself is also a eunuch. Wu Xin warns that Haigong might be at the 9th rank now. Civilization just shrugs it off, saying he has got this. After all, the old man is heavily injured, so even at the 9th rank he cannot bring his full power to bear. Then Civilization adds with a smirk, "What about me?" Out of nowhere, Obu takes a swing at Civilization from behind. Talk about a cheap shot. Wu Xin yells a warning, telling Civilization to watch out. But Civilization activates his butterfly burial step, gracefully dodging the attack like it is nothing. Absolute big brain move. Without skipping a beat, he spins around and kicks Obu square in the face, sending him crashing to the floor with blood spraying. "Get lost," he says with skills like that. "You think you can sneak attack me?" A brief moment of tense silence fills the air. Wu Xin starts to ask about his technique, and Civilization's heart drops. He panics internally, worried she might recognize the Heavenly Lotus sex moves, but instead, she just says his movements were girly. That is not the point right now. Civilization protests. Wu Xin thinks to herself, wondering if Civilization has actually reached the 6th rank, and when he even learned all this. Haigong lunges forward, shouting for the brat to die. Civilization exclaims, "Seriously? You are pulling a sneak attack too." He glides behind Haigong, dodging with ease, and taunts him with a smug, "Cannot catch me." Haigong curses him in fury. Another punch from Haigong misses completely, and Civilization keeps up the taunt, "Still cannot catch me." But Haigong overexerts himself and spits out a mouthful of blood, clearly pushing past his limits. Civilization, now clinging to a pillar, advises him to save his strength since using his energy only makes the wounds worse. Haigong grumbles that those are supposed to be his lines. Civilization turns to the officials and calls them out for being useless. "The assassin's barely hanging on, and you are not jumping in?" he yells. The officials exchange glances and decide it is time to earn some merits. "Was quite skilled in my youth," one says, and they all charge forward. Haigong coughs up more blood, and Civilization eggs him on to use whatever tricks he has left against them. In the middle of the fight, Haigong suddenly pulls out 2 walnuts from somewhere and mutters that even the best plans do not go smoothly. The officials are baffled, wondering what the walnuts mean and what he is up to. Civilization jokes, "You are pulling out walnuts now, trying to boost your brain power, what?" But Haigong explains that he has kept these walnuts preserved with his internal energy for a long time, planning to use them to regrow what he lost. Now he has to sacrifice them to survive. He crushes them, and a bright light bursts out. The officials gasp at the strange glow, asking what he hid inside those walnuts. But the moment the walnuts burst open, Strange glow and heavy censorship appeared, and Civilization's eyes widened. Could it really be what he thought? Pointing at the glowing object, he shouted, "That is your, you know." Haigong confirmed it without shame, declaring that those were indeed his missing parts. He explained that ever since his castration he had preserved them with his energy, keeping them alive in hopes of one day regrowing his manhood. Civilization looked disgusted and said he understood the bitterness, but questioned why he'd bring out something so gross at a time like this. But Haigong countered that because he'd infused them with his energy for years, they now stored decades of his pure internal force. He lamented that he had been only one step away from success, but now he had to sacrifice them to survive. With that, he crushed his own testicles, shouting that even becoming a eunuch emperor was better than dying right now. He swore vengeance, promising that they would all pay for destroying his chance to regain his manhood. Civilization blurted out in disbelief, "Wait, you can cheat with your balls." But his bravado faded as he realized he was outmatched. He quickly tried to rally the officials, calling it a test of loyalty and patriotism. Seeing them hesitate, he mocked them, asking if they really could not handle a little disadvantage. Suddenly, Ruyan's voice echoed in his mind, warning him to watch out as Haigong was charging at him. Haigong struck him square in the chest, roaring for the little brat to die. Civilization managed to dodge Haigong's strike, but the attack still grazed his chest, leaving a bloody gash. Beside him, Ruyan winced in sympathetic pain, clutching her head. Wu Xin rushed over, asking if he was okay. Civilization played it cool, saying he ducked fast and it was just a scratch. Ruyan warned through telepathy that Haigong had powered up several notches. Civilization could not help but crack a joke about the guy's speed being so blatant, it was like he was not even pretending. Haigong let out a creepy laugh, taunting them to keep dodging and see how long they could last. The attacks kept coming. Civilization dodged and weaved, but the shockwaves from Haigong's fists still chipped away at his health. Desperate, Civilization asked Ruyan how much longer they could hold out. She admitted that with their current cultivation, 10 more exchanges at most. Civilization muttered to himself, 10 rounds? Then he mentally screamed for Sisi to get back here or he was dead. Wu Xin urged him to flee, saying he was no match. But Civilization shot back, calling that stupid talk. He asked, "If I run, what about you?" Wu Xin's eyes welled up, moved by his loyalty. Suddenly, a flashback to 12 years ago. A ferocious wolf charged at them, and young Civilization, holding a stick, shielded Wu Xin, shouting for her to run and leave him. Back then, he had yelled the same words, "Idiot, what nonsense." And he asked, "If I leave, what about you?" In the present, Ruyan hung her head low and whispered, "Civilization, I am sorry." Haigong sneered, mocking their touching display, saying it almost made him cry. He declared he'd send them both to the underworld to keep each other company, gathering power in his hands. He lunged at Civilization, grabbing him by the throat and squeezing. "Let us see you dodge now," he rasped. Civilization felt his strength fading. Only one desperate move remained. He struck at Haigong's groin with a technique called Zihong Cannon. But Haigong was a eunuch, so the blow had no effect. "You think that would work on me?" he growled. Civilization coolly replied that he knew the eunuch had nothing there, but he had something else in mind. Actually, Civilization had planted a bundle of explosives right under Haigong's crotch and yelled, "Dead eunuch, eat this." Times have changed. Haigong looked down, confused. What is this? A massive explosion erupted beneath Haigong, throwing Civilization back. Wu Xin helped him up, asking what that move was. Civilization grinned, saying it was just a little chemistry. He thought back. Thank goodness he paid attention in chemistry class and had collected saltpeter for explosives while searching for the dragon vein. He had planned to use it to escape the palace later, but now it was life or death. But Haigong emerged from the blast, still standing. Civilization's jaw dropped. No way. How was he still alive? Enraged, Haigong charged again, screaming he'd kill the brat. Civilization panicked, yelling, "Stay away from me." Just then, Sisi's voice rang out, commanding, "Release the arrows." A rain of arrows descended upon Haigong, piercing him from all sides. A few stray arrows nearly hit Civilization too, making him yelp as he hastily dodged. Sisi rushed to the Empress's side, asking how she was. Wu Xin coughed, saying her chest felt tight. Civilization snapped at Sisi, demanding her archers aim better. A crowd of officials swarmed in, declaring they had come to protect the Empress, and insisting on summoning a physician immediately. But Sisi roared at them to shut up, silencing the chaos with a single shout. Kneeling beside Wu Xin, she grimly announced that her meridians were a mess, her organs nearly all displaced, and she was hanging on by a thread. Civilization's heart sank as he wondered if Wu Xin was really about to die. Impaled by countless arrows, Haigong gasped out his final words, lamenting that he was so close, and that he refused to accept his fate. The scene flashed back 40 years. A woman warned a young man named Dafu to be careful on his journey to the capital. He assured her he would be cautious. That young man was none other than Haigong himself, 20 years old and brimming with ambition, declaring that this time he would surely become a jinshi. Haigong, a young scholar from the countryside, arrived at the bustling capital city of Wudu, marveling at its enormous size and crowds. But before he could take it all in, a mounted official rudely knocked him over, cursing him as a country bumpkin looking for trouble. Picking himself off the ground, Haigong gritted his teeth and swore that once he passed the imperial exam and became an official, he'd make that arrogant rider pay tenfold. He made his way to the examination hall, determined to prove his worth. The exam officially started as the invigilator announced the beginning. To his relief, the questions were all within his study scope, feeling optimistic about his performance. This time, I am definitely going to make it, he thought, with determination. But as he later recalled, life often delivers a harsh reality check, and this was one of those moments. When the results were posted, his name was nowhere on the list. Haigong had not passed. Stunned, he could not believe it. He had reviewed every single question that appeared to. With a heavy heart, he fell to his knees and apologized to his mother for failing her expectations. Drowning his sorrows in a tavern, he wept and asked why this had happened after all his preparation. Then he overheard loud congratulations from the next room. Someone was celebrating a successful ranking. The word ranking caught his attention, sparking bitter curiosity. But the voices inside revealed an ugly truth. Money and connections had bought their success, while they mocked naive country students. And then he heard his own name. The man they had replaced was him, Haigong, dismissed as a poor rustic. 10 years of hard study meant nothing against the power of wealth. Rage and resentment consumed him. He burst into the room, shouting that he would kill them all. He lunged at the man who stole his ranking, but he was quickly outnumbered and overpowered. One of the officials recognized him and cruelly threatened to break his third leg. As a punishment, a vicious kick landed right between his legs, causing excruciating pain. Screaming in agony, he heard his attackers say the fun was over and walk away. As they left, one henchman asked why they did not finish him, and the lead villain laughed, saying he'd spare his life for now. That villain had a crueler plan, to make Haigong watch helplessly as his entire family died because of him. When Haigong returned home, he called out for his mother, only to find his entire family had been murdered, and he was utterly powerless to stop it. He realized his studies were useless in a world ruled by money and power, and he blamed the corrupt Wu dynasty for everything. So he abandoned all dignity, entered the palace as a eunuch, and vowed revenge. 20 years later, he had become the head of the imperial household department and eliminated everyone who had persecuted him. But no matter how much power he wielded, he could never become a real man, just a eunuch manipulating politics, unable to truly break the dynasty's foundations. Then, out of the blue, the prince finally summoned Haigong. But despite all his scheming and revenge, it all amounted to nothing. Lying in a pool of his own blood, he gasped out his regret before taking his last breath. Talk about a tragic end. From the shadows, a masked figure emerged, sneering at the bodies and calling them useless trash. The mysterious observer paused, intrigued by the fact that the dead eunuch knew English and gunpowder. Now that is interesting, he muttered. Civilization knelt by the corpse and asked bluntly if the eunuch was really dead. Nearby, Jia Renyi anxiously asked about the Empress's condition. Sisi explained that the wounds were critical and only her master could heal them, but fetching him would take too long. Despair crept into Civilization's thoughts as he wondered if his beloved Empress was really about to die. But then, a telepathic voice cut through the gloom. Ruyan announced she could save her. The cunning courtesan laid out her reasoning. If the Empress died now, chaos would ensue, ruining their plan to find the dragon vein. So the plan was simple: save her life, then control her to extract the dragon vein's location. Civilization agreed, desperate to save his love. Sisi urged Civilization to send for her master, but he declared it was too late. Shocked and tearful, Sisi could not believe her ears, but Civilization revealed he had his own way to save the Empress. Sisi scolded Civilization, insisting this was no time for jokes. Every passing moment could cost the Empress her life. But Civilization stood his ground, declaring he was not joking and that only he could save her now. The officials around them sneered, calling him a useless waste who could not possibly heal anyone, accusing him of wanting to kill the Empress. Civilization roared for them to shut up, silencing the room with sheer force. He turned to Sisi, stating plainly that the Empress would not last until her master arrived. Sisi thought it over, remembering how he had stalled the assassins, and began to wonder if he really could pull it off. She finally gave in and said she trusted him. Without wasting a second, Civilization asked her to help carry the Empress into the room, and she agreed. Under the vast starry sky, they moved the unconscious Empress into a quiet traditional building. Inside, Sisi asked again if he was truly certain, and he replied with confidence that now that he was here, he had it under control. She pressed him on his plan and what supplies he needed. Guided by a telepathic message from Ruyan, Civilization listed the items: silver needles, a furnace, hot water, clean towels, and a knife. Sisi immediately ordered someone to prepare everything. A moment later, he asked her to help lift the Empress into a sitting position. He then began to remove her outer robe. Shocked, Sisi demanded to know what he was doing, and he calmly replied it was for treatment. She protested that this would expose her completely, but he insisted it was necessary. To ease her mind, he offered to teach her how to insert the needles while she handled the clothing, but warned that any mistake could be fatal. Sisi reluctantly agreed, threatening him if he tried anything funny, and he scoffed at the suggestion. Positioning himself behind the Empress, he noticed an old scar on her back and paused, recognizing it. A memory surfaced of leading a younger Wu Xin into the forest to play. Suddenly, a wolf had appeared out of nowhere. To protect him, Wu Xin had thrown herself in the way, taking a scratch across her back and shouting a warning. Back in the present, he realized the scar was from that very incident and muttered that he owed her a lot. Ruyan's voice echoed in his mind, instructing him to focus and insert the needles into her back at the Fengmen, Feishu, and Xinshu acupoints, fast and precise. He followed the guidance, carefully placing each needle. The first step was complete, and he prepared for what came next. He told Sisi to take a clean knife and cut the Yongchuan acupoint on the Empress's right foot to release the poison blood. She hesitated but nodded. He passed the blade through the fire to sterilize it. Sisi steeled herself, telling the Empress to bear the pain, and brought the knife to her foot. Sisi took a deep breath and made a clean cut across the Empress's foot, letting the dark blood seep out. Civilization assured her that they just needed to wait for all the poison blood to drain out completely. As the dark liquid pooled into the golden basin, Sisi realized it was definitely poison, no mistaking that color. A flicker of doubt crossed her mind. Maybe this guy actually knew what he was doing. Could she have been wrong about him being a traitor all along? But then the flow stopped abruptly. Sisi called Civilization over, pointing at the wound in confusion. Civilization immediately reached out to Ruyan through their mental link, asking why the blood had stopped. Ruyan explained that the poison had coagulated and simple bloodletting could no longer expel it. Desperate, he asked if there was any other option left. Without hesitation, he vowed to try whatever it took, no matter how risky, to save the Empress. Ruyan's voice came through again, hesitant but clear. The only way now was to use his mouth, channeling inner chi to draw the poison out directly. Civilization stared down at the Empress's delicate foot, his face heating up. He could barely form the words, repeating "suck it out" in disbelief, the absurdity of the situation hitting him hard. Sisi gently held Wu Xin's hand, her voice trembling as she asked if the poison could not be expelled. Civilization explained that the stagnant toxins had solidified, and simple bloodletting was no longer enough. Hearing that, Sisi's eyes filled with tears as she wondered if Wu Xin might not survive. Civilization silently examined the delicate foot, realizing there was only one way left, the method Liu Ruyan had suggested. He told Sisi not to panic. He still had a plan, a physical expulsion technique. Sisi blinked, confused. Then he dropped the bombshell. He would have to suck the poison out with his mouth. Sisi froze, her face turning red, unable to believe what she just heard. She protested, worried he'd get poisoned himself, and reminded him that the Empress's body was sacred. But Wu Xin suddenly coughed up blood, and both Civilization and Sisi cried out in alarm. Liu Ruyan snapped at them to stop wasting time or she'd really die. Civilization yelled back that he knew. He declared that any more delay would let the poison reach her heart, and without another word, he leaned down and began sucking the venom from her foot. Talk about commitment. Watching him risk his life, Sisi felt a wave of guilt for ever suspecting his motives. She silently vowed to apologize to him properly once this was over. When he finally finished, Civilization felt dizzy and lightheaded. Ruyan scolded him for sucking too fast, as if he was trying to die. She revealed that she had been using her internal energy to shield him from the poison, otherwise he'd be out cold too. Civilization ordered Sisi to clean the wound on Wu Xin's foot while he removed the silver needles from her back. Sisi immediately offered to help, stepping closer. Pulling out the last needle, Civilization announced that the treatment was complete. But then Wu Xin turned and hugged him, mumbling that something was poking her. Awkward moment achieved, Sisi asked if he was okay, and he quickly replied he was fine, maybe a little too quickly. He said Wu Xin's toxins were mostly gone, handed over care to Sisi, and claimed he needed to rest. Then he ran off, hunched over in a comical way, shouting for them to call him if anything changed. 3 days later, a voice echoed through the palace. How is this possible? The imperial physician stared in disbelief. The poison in the Empress's body had completely vanished in just 3 days. He added that her meridians were restored to normal, and he begged to know what method civilization had used. Sisi cut him off sharply, reminding him how he had previously dismissed civilization's abilities. The physician stammered, pretending not to remember. Wu Xin raised an eyebrow, her tone cool as she echoed. That's so? The physician dropped to his knees, claiming he had only been worried about Her Majesty. Sisi ordered him to go back and study for another 10 years, and he scurried away with a meek, yes. Wu Xin let out a long sigh, and Sisi gently urged her not to get angry now that she was finally recovering. Once the physician had scurried off, Wu Xin fixed her gaze on Sisi and demanded to know the exact method civilization had used. Sisi fumbled, calling it a long and somewhat awkward story, but Wu Xin insisted she was fit to hear it. After a deep breath, Sisi started. Civilization. He took the poisonous blood from your body, and then she dropped the final word, and sucked it all out. Talk about an awkward confession. Wu Xin's face flushed as the realization hit. He used his mouth on me. Panic surged through her. What if he was poisoned too? She tried to leap out of bed, but Sisi gently restrained her, reminding her she was still weak. He is okay, just a little tired, Sisi assured. Let me check on him for you. You need to rest, Sisi offered. Wu Xin sighed and agreed, her mind still racing. Silently she hoped, civilization, please be all right. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Sisi thought a direct apology would be too stiff, so she decided to cook a meal to make amends. She excitedly declared she'd prepare a feast fit for a genius. But then she noticed the pantry was running low on spices. A sudden idea sparked in her mind. She recalled her master's cryptic advice. Only use that special ingredient when you truly like someone. It makes shared meals even more delicious. Sisi quickly shook off the thought, telling herself there was no way she liked him. This is just compensation for my earlier misunderstanding, she convinced herself.